The crystal chandelier above the grand ballroom fractured light across 100 faces. When Varel Knox's scream tore through the music, her body hit the marble stairs once, twice, 3 times, each impact a sickening crack that turned heads and stopped hearts. Blood bloomed across white silk, guests gasped, servants froze, and Varel, sprawled at the bottom like a broken doll, raised one trembling hand and pointed directly at Duchess Celine Blackthorne. "She pushed me!" Varel choked out, tears streaming. Duke Rowan Blackthorne's face went stone. Within minutes, guards surrounded his wife. No questions, no trial, just cold orders. Confine her. But here's what nobody saw. What Celine replayed in her mind as they locked her away. Varel's foot, the angle, the distance. Physics don't lie. People do. Want to know how a duchess survives being framed by her husband's mistress? Hit that like button, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And stay with me until the end. The dining hall at Blackthorne Manor had never been built for warmth. High ceilings swallowed voices. Long windows let in light, but no comfort. Celine had learned this her first winter here 6 years ago, when she'd arrived as a bride and discovered that marble elegance and emotional hospitality rarely occupied the same address. Tonight was the Spring Concord, an annual gathering where nobility pretended politics tasted better with wine. Celine wore midnight blue velvet because Rowan's mother had once told her it made her look regal. She wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an instruction manual. "You're doing that thing again," murmured Lady Thea Garrison, Celine's closest friend among the aristocratic circus. Thea had positioned herself strategically at Celine's elbow, champagne flute in hand, pearls catching candlelight. "What thing?" "That face. Like you're calculating structural integrity instead of enjoying the party." Celine's mouth twitched. "Old habit. My father was an engineer before he bought his title. I grew up watching him assess whether bridges would hold. And now you assess whether conversations will?" "Something like that." Across the room, Duke Rowan Blackthorne worked the crowd with practiced ease. Tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair going distinguished at the temples. He looked like money felt. Expensive, untouchable, inherited rather than earned. He'd been a political marriage for both of them. She'd brought her father's newly minted title and considerable mining fortune. He'd brought old blood and older connections. It had been civil, mostly. Separate bedrooms after the first year, polite conversations over breakfast. A working partnership that looked like marriage from the outside. Then Varel Knox had happened. Celine spotted her now, draped in champagne silk that probably cost more than most servants earned in a year. Varel Knox, 23 to Celine's 31. Honey blonde where Celine was dark. Soft where Celine had edges. Rowan's official mistress for 8 months. Though everyone pretended not to notice the way she touched his arm, the way he leaned into her proximity. "She's wearing your pearls," Thea observed dryly. Celine's jaw tightened. "They're not mine. They're Blackthorne family heirlooms. Rowan can give them to whomever he wants." "That's remarkably evolved of you." "That's remarkably practical of me. I pick my battles." And this, Varel's presence, her increasing boldness, her migration from discreet apartments in the city to permanent rooms in the East Wing. This wasn't a battle Celine could win through confrontation. Rowan had made his choice clear. Fighting it would only make Celine look desperate. So she'd done what her engineer father had taught her, assess the structure, identify load-bearing elements, adapt. "Lord Ashford is heading this way," Thea warned. "The one who keeps proposing canal legislation nobody understands." "I understand it. Of course you do. You're fundamentally weird." Celine smiled despite herself. Lord Ashford was indeed approaching, jowls quivering with enthusiasm for infrastructure. She prepared her interested face. But before Ashford arrived, the musicians struck up a waltz. Couples drifted toward the center of the ballroom. Rowan materialized beside her with the timing of someone fulfilling an obligation. "Protocol requires at least one dance," he said. Not a request. An observation. "Of course." His hand at her waist felt familiar, but not intimate. They'd done this dance, literal and metaphorical, dozens of times. They moved well together. Practice made perfect, even when perfect meant perfectly empty. "The Merchant Council representatives seemed pleased," Celine offered. Small talk, safe territory. Your insights on the Northern Railway project helped. They hadn't considered the seasonal flooding patterns." My father's maps were thorough. Yes. A pause, then lower. You don't have to stay much longer. I know these events bore you. She met his eyes. Gray, careful. I'm the Duchess. This is my role. Celine. It's fine, Rowan. We're fine. But they weren't, and both of them knew it. Whatever contract they'd signed 6 years ago, the unspoken agreement about respect and partnership, Varel's presence had rewritten the terms without Celine's signature. The waltz ended. Rowan bowed with precision. Celine curtsied with equal formality. Your Grace, someone called out. Duke Marlin, old money and older wine stains on his cravat. A toast to the Blackthorn legacy. Glasses raised, voices echoed. Celine lifted her champagne with everyone else. That's when the scream split the air. Everything happened fast and slow simultaneously, the way disasters do. Varel Knox stood at the top of the grand marble staircase that curved down into the ballroom's entrance hall. Her champagne silk caught the chandelier light. For one frozen second, she looked like a painting. Then she fell. Not stumbled, not tripped. Fell. Body loose, arms wheeling, face twisted in terror. She hit the third step with her shoulder, a sound like a mallet on meat. Momentum carried her down. Fourth step, her hip. Fifth, her head made contact and someone in the crowd gasped. Celine's brain did what it always did under stress. Calculated. Angle of descent. Force of impact. Distribution of... Varelli crashed to the bottom landing in a crumple of silk and limbs. Blood spread across her temple, vivid against blonde hair. Her left arm bent wrong. The ballroom erupted. Guests surged forward. Servants ran for help. Someone shouted for the physician. Rowan vaulted over the railing, not using the stairs, just raw urgency, and dropped to Varel's side. Don't move, he commanded. Don't move. Help is coming. Varel's eyes fluttered open. Blood trickled from her hairline. Her voice came out thin, thready, broken. She pushed me. The crowd noise dimmed like someone had stuffed cotton in Celine's ears. Who? Rowan's hands shook as he pressed fabric to Varel's bleeding head. Who pushed you? Varel's hand rose, trembling, theatrical, unmistakable. Her finger pointed up the stairs, directly at Celine. The Duchess, Varel whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. She pushed me down the stairs. The ballroom went silent. 60 faces turned toward Celine. Time crystallized. Celine saw everything with brutal clarity. The placement of guests, the angle of accusation, the blood on Varel's temple catching light like a ruby. She saw Rowan's face transform, shock into something harder. That's not true, Celine said. Her voice came out steady, calm, the exact wrong tone for someone falsely accused. I wasn't anywhere near the stairs. You were right there. Varel's voice cracked with pain and accusation. Right behind me. I felt your hands. I was across the ballroom. Witnesses can confirm. Liar? Varel tried to sit up, gasped in pain. The drama of it perfected. You've hated me since I arrived. You threatened me just last week. I never... Enough! Rowan's voice cut through everything. He stood, blood on his hands from Varel's wound. His face had gone to stone. Guards! Rowan. Celine descended 3 steps before armed men moved to block her. Rowan, this is absurd. Look at the physics. I couldn't have... You threatened her, Rowan said, each word precise as a blade. Multiple staff members heard you tell her she didn't belong in this house. In a private conversation about household arrangements, you told her she'd regret undermining this family. Celine's stomach dropped. She had said that. 2 weeks ago, after Varel had countermanded Celine's instructions to the kitchen staff. But the context, the tone, it had been about authority, not violence. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Do I? Rowan's gray eyes had gone winter cold. I know you've resented Varel's presence. I know you've been increasingly volatile. And now she's bleeding at the bottom of a staircase, claiming you pushed her. Rowan's jaw worked. Captain, escort the Duchess to the East Wing. Confine her there until this is sorted. The crowd murmured, scandalized, delighted. This would feed gossip mills for months. You're not serious. Celine looked past the guards to her husband. Rowan, you're not actually... Do it. Captain Dane stepped forward, apologetic but firm. Your Grace, if you'll please come with me. Thea pushed through the crowd. This is madness. Celine wouldn't... Lady Garrison, step back, Rowan commanded. His attention remained fixed on Celine like she'd become a stranger. This matter will be investigated thoroughly. Until then, I want my wife somewhere she can't harm anyone else. The phrasing landed like a slap. Can't harm anyone else. As if guilt was already established. As if 6 years of partnership meant nothing against 8 months of silk and tears. Celine felt the structure collapsing. Not the ballroom, the entire architecture of her life. But she'd learned from her father, when a bridge starts to fail, you don't waste time arguing with physics. You move. Fine, she said quietly. I'll cooperate. She turned and walked. Not dragged, not escorted. She walked with her spine straight and her head level, while behind her Varel's theatrical sobbing filled the ballroom, and Rowan's voice issued orders for physicians and investigators. Captain Dane fell into step beside her, keeping a respectful distance. They climbed a different staircase. Servants wrote, less grand, but functional. For what it's worth, Your Grace, Dane murmured. I've served this house 8 years. I've never seen you raise your voice, let alone your hand. Then why follow his orders? Because he's the Duke, and because refusing won't help you. Dane's weathered face showed sympathy, but I'll make sure the guards assigned to you are fair ones. Men who know your character. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. They reached the east wing, Varel's wing, Celine realized with bitter irony. The rooms prepared for the mistress would now house the accused wife. The symmetry was almost poetic. Dane opened the door to a suite Celine had never entered. Tastefully appointed, fresh flowers, a bed that looked more comfortable than her own. I'll be outside if you need anything, Dane said. Within reason. Meaning I'm locked in. Meaning the Duke wants you contained. I'm sorry. The door closed. The lock turned. Celine stood in the center of the room and did what she always did when systems failed. She thought. Her mind replayed this fall frame by frame. Varel at the top of the stairs. Body position. The way she'd fallen. Not forward like someone pushed, but almost deliberately sideways. The scream before impact, not during. The convenient witnesses. The blood. Celine moved to the window, 3 stories up, garden below. No easy exit there. She'd been trained to think structurally. Weight distribution, stress points, what held up under pressure and what collapsed. Right now, she was the stress point. And someone, Varel, clearly, had engineered this collapse with precision. But why? Celine paced. Varel had already won. She had Rowan's attention, his affection, his protection. She wore the family pearls. She occupied the East Wing. What possible advantage came from framing Celine for attempted murder? Unless... Celine stopped mid-step. Unless being the mistress wasn't enough. Unless Varel wanted the title. Duchess. Not just jewelry and apartments, but legitimacy. And for that, Celine needed to be more than displaced. She needed to be ruined. The thought settled like ice in Celine's chest. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was strategic demolition. And Celine had been so focused on maintaining dignity, on not fighting losing battles, that she'd failed to notice someone was mining the foundation beneath her feet. A knock at the door broke her spiral. It opened without waiting for permission. A servant entered. Young woman, early 20s, nervous energy. Your Grace, I'm Mara. Captain Dane assigned me to attend you. I don't need attending. I need legal counsel and a locksmith. Mara's mouth twitched despite herself. I brought tea. And, well, she lowered her voice. Message from Lady Garrison. She says to tell you, engineers check calculations twice. Celine felt something loosen in her chest. Thea. Reminding her to think, to verify, to not accept the first answer. Tell Lady Garrison I appreciate the advice. She also says she's making noise downstairs, getting people to question the official story, but Mara hesitated. But what? But the Duke's not listening. He's with Miss Knox now, and the way he's looking at her, Mara trailed off, uncomfortable. Like she's the victim and I'm the monster. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Mara set down the tea tray. For what it's worth, below-stairs staff don't believe it. We know you. You're fair. You pay attention to our names. You fixed the heating in the servants' quarters when the old duke wouldn't. That's not someone who shoves people down staircases. Unfortunately, character references don't outweigh blood evidence and eyewitness testimony. No, Mara agreed, but they're not nothing. After Mara left, Celine stood at the window and watched carriages begin to depart. Guests leaving early, gossip already spreading. By morning, every household in the capital would know. Duchess Blackthorn had attempted to murder her husband's mistress in a jealous rage. The narrative was already written. Celine's role was already cast. Unless she rewrote the script. Her father used to say, "When a bridge fails, you don't blame the river. You examine the design. Time to examine the design." Celine closed her eyes and reconstructed the scene. Varel at the top of the stairs. Approximately 15 people within visual range. Celine herself had been across the ballroom, at least 40 feet away. No possible way to reach Varel unnoticed. But Varel had felt hands she'd claimed. Detailed accusation, convincing. Except physics didn't lie. If Celine had pushed hard enough to send someone tumbling down marble stairs, there would be evidence. Scuff marks on the floor. Witness testimony about Celine's movement. Something. And the fall itself, Celine replayed it again. The body mechanics. Varel had gone down sideways, shoulder first. That's not how people fall when pushed from behind. That's how people fall when they throw themselves. But the blood, that was real. The injury was real, unless Varel had injured herself deliberately. The thought seemed paranoid. Who would risk broken bones and head trauma for a scheme? Someone desperate. Someone playing for stakes Celine didn't fully understand. Celine needed information, needed to map the battlefield properly. She surveyed the room systematically. Varel's room, or at least the room prepared for her. Personal items scattered strategically. Expensive perfume, silk robe, books that looked decorative rather than read. Letters on the writing desk. Celine hesitated only a moment. Privacy concerns didn't apply when someone had framed you for assault. The letters were mostly boring. Social correspondence, merchant invoices for clothing and jewelry. Apparently Rowan's generosity had limits, and Varel supplemented with her own funds. Then Celine found the journal. Leather-bound, expensive. The kind of item that signaled importance even if the contents were mundane. Celine opened it. The first entries were what she expected. Flowery descriptions of romance with Rowan, complaints about the Duchess's coldness, self-pitying meditations on being unloved and misunderstood. But then, 3 weeks ago, the tone shifted. The lawyer confirmed it. Common law after 7 years, but only if she's fully displaced. A mistress has no standing unless the wife is removed entirely. Disgraced, preferably. Rowan is too honorable to simply divorce her without cause. I need cause. Celine's hands tightened on the journal. Next entry. Studied the manor layout. The grand staircase has the best sight lines. Maximum witnesses. Marble is unforgiving. Real injuries required for credibility. Acceptable risk. Practice falls tomorrow when the house is quiet. And then, yesterday. Everything is ready. Tomorrow night, during the spring concord, I fall. She threatens me publicly. Already done. Staff witness her hostility. Already planted. All that remains is the performance. Rowan will have no choice but to believe me. And once she's arrested, once the scandal destroys her completely, nothing stands between me and the title. Celine read it 3 times. Each pass made her colder. This wasn't passion. This was premeditation. Varel had engineered every detail. The threats Celine supposedly made, baited and recorded. The witnesses, selected and prepared. The fall itself, practiced. Celine wanted to be shocked. Instead, she felt a strange clarity. This was a structural problem. Systems and leverage. Varel had simply played the game better. But games had rules, and structures had weaknesses. The journal was evidence, proof of conspiracy. But alone, it wouldn't be enough. Varel could claim it was fabricated, that Celine had forged it out of desperation. Celine needed more. Needed to reconstruct the fall itself, prove it was staged. Needed witnesses willing to testify to what they'd actually seen versus what they'd been told to see. Needed to become the engineer instead of the bridge. A noise outside the door made Celine quickly return the journal to the desk. Footsteps passed. Guards changing shifts, probably. She had until morning, maybe less, before formal charges were brought. before magistrates arrived, before this transitioned from house arrest to actual legal proceedings. One night, to solve a puzzle designed specifically to trap her, Celine moved to the window again. Below, in the garden, she could see lights in the main house. Rowan's study window glowed. Was he there now, agonizing over his wife's supposed betrayal, or comforting his mistress, believing her tears? After 6 years, Celine thought she'd understood their arrangement, the boundaries, the unspoken agreements. Turns out she'd been mapping only half the territory. She touched the cold glass. Out there, beyond the estate walls, the city spread in darkness. The capital where she'd arrived as a young bride, nervous and hopeful, where she'd learned to navigate aristocratic politics and inherited hierarchies, where she'd carved out a role for herself, not beloved but respected, competent, reliable, all of it dissolving because she'd failed to see the knife until it was already buried in her back. No, not dissolved, not yet. Celine stepped back from the window. She'd spent 6 years being the dutiful duchess, playing by rules she didn't write. Being reasonable. Being dignified. Time to be something else. Time to be the engineer's daughter who knew that every structure had a breaking point, and how to find it. The moon rose higher. The house settled into night sounds. Celine didn't sleep. She planned. Dawn came gray and unwelcome through windows Celine hadn't bothered to curtain. She'd spent the night mapping every detail she could remember, sketching the staircase layout on the back of Varel's expensive stationery, calculating angles and trajectories until her eyes burned. The lock rattled at 6. Mara entered with breakfast, toast, eggs, coffee that smelled better than it had any right to in a prison. "Sleep at all?" Mara asked, setting down the tray. "No? Smart. They're talking downstairs about moving you to the city magistrate by noon." Mara kept her voice low. "Duke's orders. He wants this handled officially." Celine's stomach twisted, but her hand stayed steady as she poured coffee. "What's the staff saying?" "That it's madness. That you've never shown violence, but—" Mara hesitated. "Miss Knox's lady's maid found bruises on her arms this morning. Fresh ones. She's telling everyone the Duchess grabbed her last week, threatened her in private. I never touched her." "I know, but the maid's convincing. And people want to believe the pretty girl with the bleeding head over the cold Duchess who never smiled enough." The assessment stung because it was accurate. Celine had never courted popularity, had never learned to perform warmth the way Varel did, the way court politics rewarded. "Lady Garrison tried to see you last night," Mara continued. "Guards wouldn't allow it. But she left this." Mara produced a folded note from her apron pocket. Celine opened it. Thea's handwriting, rushed and angular, counted witnesses. Most were watching Rowan dance, not the stairs. Only 3 had clear sight lines. Lord Ashford, drunk, Lady Pemberton, half-blind, and a footman named James. "James won't talk to me, but he looked sick when I mentioned your name, like he's carrying something heavy. Find him." T. A footman. Servants saw everything nobility missed. If James had witnessed something that contradicted the official story— "I need to speak with this James," Celine said. Mara winced. "Can't. He requested transfer to the London townhouse this morning. Emergency family matter, supposedly. Left before sunrise. Convenient." "Very." Mara began clearing last night's untouched dinner. "Your Grace, forgive me for speaking plainly, but you're running out of time. Whatever you're planning, it needs to happen soon." Celine studied the young woman. Mara had kind eyes and calloused hands, someone who worked for her position, not inherited it. Someone who might understand what it meant to be underestimated. "How well do you know the house layout?" Celine asked. "Born here. My mother was head housekeeper before she passed. I know every passage, every shortcut, every squeaky floorboard." "Including ways out of locked rooms?" Mara's eyes widened. Then slowly she smiled. "The East Wing was renovated 40 years ago. Before that, it was the old Duke's private quarters. He was— let's say he valued discretion. There's a passage behind the library panel, leads down to the gardens." "Still functional?" "Probably dusty, maybe full of spiders, but yes." Celine felt pieces clicking together. "If I were to need to move through the house unseen, could you create a distraction? Depends what kind of distraction you need." "The kind that gets guards away from the main hall long enough for me to access the grand staircase." Mara went quiet, processing. When she spoke again, her voice carried weight. You're going to prove she faked it, aren't you? The fall. I'm going to try. They'll arrest you properly if you're caught out of this room. They're arresting me anyway. Mara chewed her lip. Then, there's a shift change at 11. Guards get sloppy during transitions. They're focused on reporting status, not watching every shadow. I could stage something in the kitchens. Grease fire, maybe. Nothing dangerous, just enough smoke to pull attention. That's risking your position. My position's already at risk. Miss Knox has been making lists. Staff she wants replaced once she's duchess. I'm on it. So are most of the old guard who remember you as more than ice and silence. Mara straightened her apron. Besides, my mother taught me to serve the house, not whoever's currently sleeping in the master's bed. Celine felt something unexpected, gratitude sharp enough to hurt. Thank you. Thank me when we pull this off. If we don't, we're both scrubbed. After Mara left, Celine forced herself to eat. She'd need energy for whatever came next. The toast tasted like paper, but she swallowed it anyway, washing it down with coffee gone lukewarm. She retrieved Virel's journal from where she'd hidden it under the mattress. Evidence. But evidence that required context, required demonstration. Words on a page versus blood on marble. She knew which one would win in court, unless she changed the equation. The morning dragged. Celine paced, measured steps, eating away at expensive carpet. Outside, she could hear the estate waking, servants moving, horses being exercised, the distant clang of the smithy. Normal sounds from a world that had tilted sideways. At 10, footsteps approached. Multiple sets. The door opened without knocking. Rowan stood in the threshold, flanked by two guards Celine didn't recognize. His face looked haggard, shadows under his eyes, hair uncombed. He'd been up all night too, apparently. The magistrate arrives in 2 hours, he said without preamble. You'll be transferred to his custody pending formal inquiry. No greeting? No good morning, wife I've known for 6 years? His jaw tightened. Don't. Don't what? Point out that you've convicted me without trial? That you've believed her over me without question? She's injured, Celine. Concussion, broken wrist, bruised ribs. The physician confirmed, I don't doubt her injuries. I doubt their cause. You're saying she threw herself down a marble staircase? Rowan's voice climbed. Broke her own bones to frame you? Do you hear how that sounds? I hear how it sounds. I also know what I saw. The physics don't work, Rowan. The angle, the fall pattern, the timing. You and your damned calculations. He stepped into the room, guards hanging back. Not everything is an engineering problem. Sometimes people do terrible things when pushed too far. And you think I was pushed too far? By what? Her existence? Her presence? I've known about her for 8 months. If I'd wanted to hurt her, I've had opportunity. She says you've been escalating, threatening her in private, undermining her with the staff. I had one conversation with her about household authority. One. And it was civil. She has witnesses who say otherwise. She has people she's manipulated into lying. Rowan's hand slammed against the doorframe loud enough to make both guards flinch. Why would she lie? What possible reason? Because she wants my title. The words tore out of Celine, raw and furious. Because being a mistress isn't enough. She wants to be Duchess Blackthorn, and for that I need to be destroyed completely. That's paranoid. Read her journal. Celine pointed to the desk. It's all there. Dates, plans, practice runs. She engineered this, Rowan. Every detail. He stared at her. You went through her personal things. She framed me for attempted murder. I think privacy violations are the least of our concerns. Rowan moved to the desk, found the journal. His hand shook slightly as he opened it. Celine watched his face as he read, watched doubt creep in, watched him fight it, watched him land on the conclusion she'd known was coming. You could have written this, he said finally, forged it to save yourself. In one night? In handwriting that matches her other correspondence? I don't know what you're capable of anymore. He closed the journal carefully, like it might bite. The woman I married was logical, controlled. This, breaking into locked rooms, making wild accusations. The woman you married is trying to survive. There's a difference between control and surrender. They stood across the room from each other, 6 years of careful distance compressed into 10 feet of expensive carpet. Celine could see the war in his face, the part that wanted to believe her fighting against the part that had already committed to Virel's narrative. The magistrate will sort this, Rowan said finally. If you're innocent, the truth will emerge. You mean if the truth emerges, you might consider my innocence? That's not the same thing. What do you want from me? His voice cracked. She's bleeding, Celine. She's terrified. She says you've been stalking her, watching her, making her feel unsafe in her own home. It's not her home, it's mine. The words hung there, territorial and sharp. Rowan's face went hard. No, it's Blackthorn Manor. It belongs to the title which I hold. You're here by marriage, not birthright. The casual cruelty of it landed like a slap. Celine had brought a fortune to this marriage, had managed this estate competently for 6 years, had earned her position through work, not just vows. But in the end, she was still just the wife. Replaceable. Get out, Celine said quietly. Celine? Get out. He left. The door locked behind him. Celine stood very still, breathing through rage that wanted to shatter things. She couldn't afford rage. Rage was what they expected, the jealous wife, the hysterical woman. Rage played into Virel's script. She needed cold, needed calculation. 11 o'clock approached. Mara returned with lunch, eyes bright with purpose. Shift change in 15 minutes, she whispered. I'll start the distraction at 1:15. You'll have maybe 10 minutes before someone investigates. The passage? Behind the far bookshelf. Third panel from the left, press the rose carving. It'll swing open, leads down 1 floor, exits near the portrait gallery. From there you can access the main hall. What about the guards stationed at the staircase? Kitchen fire will pull them too. Protocol says all hands respond to fire threats. You'll have the hall to yourself. Mara pressed something into Celine's palm. A key. Servant entrance to the main floor in case the passage exit is watched. Celine closed her fingers around the metal. If this goes wrong, it won't. Or if it does, we'll face it together. Mara smiled, nervous but determined. My mother used to say the house takes care of those who care for it. You've cared, Your Grace. More than most. After Mara left, Celine changed into darker clothing, practical dress, sturdy boots. She tied her hair back severely, stripped off jewelry that might catch light. 11:15 came. Somewhere below, a bell rang urgently. Shouts erupted. Fire in the kitchens! Footsteps thundered past her door, guards abandoning posts for emergency response. Celine moved to the bookshelf, found the third panel. The rose carving felt smooth under her fingers, worn by hands that had pressed it before. She pushed. The panel swung inward with a sound like exhaled breath. Darkness yawned behind it, musty and thick. Celine had never been afraid of dark spaces. Her father had taken her into mine shafts, taught her to navigate by touch and memory. This was just another tunnel. She stepped inside. The passage was narrower than expected, walls close enough to brush both shoulders. She pulled the panel shut behind her, sealing herself in blackness. Her fingers found the wall, following it down as the floor sloped beneath her feet. 40 steps. Turn. 20 more. The air changed, less stale, moving slightly. Light filtered through cracks somewhere ahead. The passage ended at a panel similar to the entry. Celine pressed her ear against it, listening. Silence. She found the release mechanism, pushed gently. The panel opened onto the portrait gallery, long hallway lined with blackthorn ancestors glaring from gilded frames. Empty, as predicted. Celine slipped out, closing the passage behind her. The main hall lay 30 feet ahead, through an archway currently free of guards. She moved quickly, footsteps silent on runner carpet. Reached the archway, peered through. The grand staircase rose before her, marble gleaming in filtered daylight from the dome above. The bloodstain had been scrubbed away, probably by servants working through the night, but Celine could see where it had been, could reconstruct Virel's landing position. She climbed to the point where Virel had fallen, stood there, orienting herself. The ballroom had been to her left, full of witnesses. The staircase descended directly ahead, 15 steps of polished stone with an iron railing. Celine closed her eyes, replaying the fall. Body mechanics. Force vectors. The scream had come before the first impact, she was certain. And the fall itself had been lateral, shoulder first, as if Virel had thrown herself sideways rather than tumbled forward. What are you doing? Celine's eyes snapped open. Captain Dane stood at the bottom of the stairs, soot on his uniform from the kitchen fire. His expression mixed concern with professional wariness. Investigating, Celine said. You're supposed to be confined. I'm supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Neither seems to apply. She descended 3 steps, keeping her movements deliberate. You said you'd served this house 8 years. You've seen me navigate these stairs hundreds of times. I have. Have you ever seen me lose my balance? Stumble? Hesitate? Dane frowned. No, because I'm careful. I calculate. It's how I'm built. Celine reached the 7th step, where Varel's head had struck. When I descend stairs, I use the railing, always. It's automatic. Your Grace, which means if I'd been at the top of these stairs when Varel fell, my hand would have been on the railing. To push her, I'd have had to release it, reach across my body, and shove with enough force to send her tumbling. Celine demonstrated the motion. That's biomechanically awkward. Unlikely. Unless you were already standing directly behind her. I wasn't. I was across the ballroom. At least 15 witnesses can confirm that, if anyone bothers asking. Dane climbed slowly, meeting her halfway. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if someone wanted to stage a fall, they'd need to practice. Need to know exactly how to throw themselves to create the right injuries without dying. Need to scout the location, test the angles. Celine met his eyes. Did anyone report seeing Miss Knox on these stairs in the days before the incident? Alone, perhaps? At odd hours? Something shifted in Dane's expression. The night watch mentioned seeing her here several times, late. They thought she was sleepwalking. Or practicing. Dane stopped. That's a serious accusation. Less serious than attempted murder. Voices echoed from the direction of the kitchens, the fire contained, guards returning to positions. Celine's window was closing. I need to reconstruct the fall, she said urgently. With witnesses. I need to prove she staged it. You need to get back to your room before the Duke discovers you're loose. He's going to hand me to the magistrate in less than an hour. This is my last chance. Dane's face worked through calculations of his own, duty versus doubt. If you're wrong, then I'll face consequences. But if I'm right, an innocent woman is being destroyed while a liar walks free. Which version of justice are you comfortable with? The captain's jaw set. What do you need? Relief flooded through Celine, sharp and dizzying. Gather the servants who were on duty during the banquet. Anyone who saw anything, even peripherally. Bring them here. The Duke will do what he always does. Choose the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth, unless we show him evidence he can't ignore. Dane nodded once, sharply. 10 minutes, that's all I can give you before someone notices the irregularity. He strode off toward the servants' wing. Celine descended the stairs again, examining each step. The marble was old, worn smooth by generations of feet. No scuff marks, no signs of struggle, just expensive stone and morning light. Footsteps returned. Dane reappeared with 6 servants trailing behind, Mara among them, soot-smudged from the kitchen fire she'd started. The others looked confused, worried. Your Grace, ventured an older man, Thomas, the head butler. Captain Dane says you have questions about the incident. Not questions, a demonstration. Celine gestured to the top of the stairs. I need to show you something, but I need honesty in return, regardless of what you've been told to say, what you actually saw. The servants exchanged glances. Mara stepped forward. We saw Miss Knox fall, she said. But, Your Grace, there's been talk below stairs, things that don't add up. What things? Another servant spoke, older woman, gray-haired. I clean the main hall every morning. For 3 days before the banquet, I found scuff marks at the top of those stairs. Fresh ones. Like someone had been, I don't know, dancing, practicing steps. I heard her, added a young footman. 2 nights before. Came through the hall past midnight, and she was up there whispering to herself, counting. 1, 2, 3, release. Over and over. Celine's heart hammered. Did you tell anyone? Who'd believe us? We're servants. And she's, well, the footman flushed. The Duke favors her. Our word against hers means nothing. It means something to me. Celine climbed to the top position again. During the banquet, where was I when she fell? By the orchestra, Thomas said immediately. You just finished dancing with the Duke. I remember because you asked me for water, said the room was too warm. And where was Miss Knox? Already heading toward the stairs. She'd been circulating, talking to guests. Then she just drifted that direction, almost like she was waiting for the right moment. The pieces assembled themselves, clean and precise as mathematical proof. She was waiting for maximum witnesses, Celine said. Needed people watching, but not too close. Needed the right audience. She positioned herself at the edge. If I wanted to fake a fall convincingly, I'd need to commit fully. Can't hesitate, or it looks staged. Your Grace. Dane moved forward, alarmed. I'm not jumping, I'm demonstrating physics. Celine turned sideways, mimicking the position Virel had fallen from. Watch the angle. If someone pushed me forward, I'd tumble face first, arms out for protection. But Virel went shoulder first, like this. She leaned, shifted her weight. The servants gasped. That's how you fall when you control the descent, Celine said, straightening. When you've practiced the exact trajectory. You protect your head as much as possible, take the impact on less vital areas. It's still dangerous, hence the real injuries, but survivable if you know what you're doing. The blood was real, Dane said quietly. I saw it. I don't doubt that. I think she cut herself deliberately, probably with something sharp hidden in her clothing or hand. Small blade, shallow cut along the hairline. Head wounds bleed dramatically even when they're minor. Creates visceral impact. Mara's eyes widened. When I helped tend her afterward, she wouldn't let anyone touch her left hand. Kept it clenched. I thought she was in shock, but maybe she was hiding evidence. This is all speculation, Thomas said, but his voice carried doubt rather than dismissal. Convincing speculation, but without proof. I have proof. Celine pulled Virel's journal from inside her dress. She documented everything. Plans, practice schedule, intended outcome. It's all here. The servants crowded around as she showed them key passages. Their faces shifted from doubt to shock to anger. She was going to let you hang for this, the gray-haired woman whispered. Let you be arrested, disgraced, maybe worse. And for what? A title? For power, Celine corrected, which in our world is the same thing. We have to tell the Duke, Dane said. He won't believe servants over her. You said it yourself. Our word means nothing against his mistress. Then what do we do? Celine looked at the assembled group. People who worked in shadows, whose labor kept the house running, whose observations nobility ignored. People like her father had been before money bought him relevance. We force the issue, Celine said. We recreate the fall in front of witnesses who matter. Nobles, magistrates, people Rowan can't dismiss. We make Virel's deception undeniable. How? Mara asked. The magistrate arrives in 30 minutes. Rowan will bring him here. Protocol requires touring the scene of the alleged crime. When they arrive, we'll be ready. We'll demonstrate exactly how the fall was staged, and we'll have Virella's own journal as evidence of premeditation. She'll deny writing it, Dane warned. Then we compare handwriting, her letters, her correspondence. It's all in her room. The magistrate can verify authenticity. Thomas shook his head slowly. Your Grace, this is an enormous risk. If it doesn't work, I'm arrested anyway. At least this way I go down fighting. The servants looked at each other, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Mara spoke. We're with you. Tell us what you need. They had 28 minutes. Celine organized them like a military operation. Thomas stationed to watch for the magistrate's arrival. 2 servants sent to Virel's room to gather handwriting samples. Mara collecting the items they'd need for the demonstration. Captain Dane positioned himself to intercept Rowan before he reached the hall, buying them setup time. Celine herself practiced the demonstration. Not the fall. She wasn't insane enough to actually throw herself down marble stairs. But the positioning, the body mechanics, the explanation. She'd have one chance to make this clear. One moment to convince people trained to dismiss women who didn't know their place. Hoofbeats sounded outside. Thomas appeared in the archway. Magistrate's carriage, he said. 2 minutes. Celine's hands wanted to shake. She forced them still, breathing through the fear that threatened to choke rational thought. This was just another calculation. Another problem with variables and solutions. Except the variables were her life, her reputation, her future. And the solution required trusting that truth mattered more than power. Footsteps approached, multiple sets. Rowan's voice carried from the entrance hall, formal tones welcoming Magistrate Aldrich. The old man's response rumbled too low to distinguish words. Then they appeared. Rowan, Magistrate Aldrich, and behind them, Betrayal. She dressed carefully, pale colors that made her look fragile, bandages visible at her temple and wrist. She walked with a slight limp that Celine noted was on the wrong leg for her stated injuries. Betrayal stopped dead when she saw Celine standing at the top of the stairs. "What is she doing here?" Betrayal's voice climbed toward hysteria. "Rowan, she's supposed to be confined. She's dangerous." "She's precisely where the alleged crime occurred," Magistrate Aldrich said dryly. He was older than Celine expected, weathered face suggesting actual legal experience rather than purchased position. And since we're here to assess that crime, her presence seems relevant. "She'll attack me again." Betrayal moved closer to Rowan, who automatically put a protective arm around her. "I have no intention of attacking anyone," Celine said calmly. "I intend to demonstrate why your accusation is physically impossible." Rowan's face darkened. "Celine, you're making this worse. Let her speak." Aldrich moved toward the stairs, examining them with professional interest. "I've presided over 300 cases. I've learned that rushing to judgment serves justice poorly. Duchess, you have 10 minutes to make your case." 10 minutes. Celine had planned for less. "Thank you, Magistrate." She gestured to the top of the stairs. "The accusation states that I pushed Miss Knox from this position, sending her tumbling to the bottom. I'd like to establish several facts that contradict that narrative." "This is absurd," Betrayal protested. "Then it should be easy to disprove, unless you're afraid of what the demonstration will show." Betrayal's eyes flashed something ugly before the fragile mask returned. "I'm afraid of being in the same room with someone who tried to murder me." "Then leave," Celine said flatly. "I'll proceed without you." "No," Betrayal lifted her chin. "I want to watch you fail." Magistrate Aldrich raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Rowan looked between the two women, tension radiating off him. Celine began. "Fact 1, but at the time Miss Knox fell, I was across the ballroom, approximately 40 feet from this location. Multiple witnesses can confirm I was receiving water from the head butler and had been stationary for at least 3 minutes prior." "Witnesses can be mistaken," Rowan said. 6 independent observations create a pattern, not a mistake." Celine nodded to Thomas, who stepped forward. "I gave her Grace water at precisely the moment the scream occurred," Thomas stated. "She was nowhere near the stairs." Mara added, "I was serving champagne near the orchestra. Saw the whole thing. The Duchess didn't move from that spot." "Servants will say anything their mistress tells them to," Virella interjected. "Perhaps," Aldrich said, "but their testimony is recorded nonetheless. Continue, Duchess." Fact 2. The nature of the fall itself contradicts a push. When someone is shoved from behind, they fall forward, arms extended for protection. Miss Knox fell sideways, shoulder first. That's inconsistent with external force. Celine demonstrated the positions, moving with careful precision. Aldrich watched closely. "Unless you pushed her sideways," Rowan argued. "From 40 feet away. Unless I've developed telekinesis, that seems improbable." Celine met his eyes. "Think, Rowan. Actually think about the mechanics." "The blood was real," Betrayal said. "The injuries were real. Are you suggesting I imagined them?" "I'm suggesting you caused them yourself." Celine produced the journal. "This documents your planning. 3 weeks of preparation. Practice falls. Strategic witness placement. Premeditation down to the smallest detail." She handed it to Aldrich, who opened it with careful hands. His eyes moved across the pages, expression unreadable. Betrayal lunged for it. "That's private. You had no right." "I had every right when you used it to frame me for attempted murder." "I didn't write that. She forged it." "Then we'll verify the handwriting," Aldrich said calmly. He looked at Mara. "Fetch samples of Miss Knox's correspondence. Letters, notes, anything written in her hand." Mara disappeared. Betrayal's face had gone white beneath calculated bruises. "This is insane," she whispered, but the hysteria sounded performative now, overdone. "Rowan, you're letting her manipulate." "Be quiet," Rowan said. Everyone froze. Rowan had moved toward the stairs, his eyes tracing the trajectory Celine had indicated. His face showed something Celine hadn't seen in years. Actual thought, rather than comfortable assumption. Show me the fall again, he said. The way she actually went down. Celine positioned herself. She was here. She screamed, before impact, which is unusual. Then she threw herself sideways, like this. She demonstrated the motion in slow detail, protecting her head while ensuring dramatic visible injury. Rowan climbed the stairs, stood where Celine had been, looked down at the trajectory. It does look controlled, he admitted quietly, like a stunt, because it was a stunt. Dangerous but calculated. She practiced it. The cleaning staff found scuff marks from those practice runs. Mara returned with Virel's letters. Aldrich laid them beside the journal, comparing loops and slants. His finger traced corresponding letters, the distinctive way Virel formed her capitals, the specific spacing between words. This is the same hand, he said finally. Unless the Duchess is an expert forger with access to Miss Knox's personal correspondence, this journal is genuine. No, Virel's voice cracked. No, I was just writing a story, fiction. I never actually... You documented practice schedules, Aldrich said. Specific dates and times. We can verify those against household records and staff testimony. They'll lie for her. Then we'll verify against independent witnesses. Aldrich closed the journal. Duke Blackthorne, I recommend we postpone the Duchess's arrest pending further investigation. These allegations raise substantial doubt about the events in question. Rowan stood very still. Celine watched something collapse behind his eyes. The comfortable narrative he'd built. The easy villain he'd accepted. Reality intruded, messy and complicated. Rowan, Virel pleaded, tears forming with impressive speed. Don't let them do this. You know I'd never... I don't know anything anymore, he said. The words came out hollow. Virel's face transformed. The sweetness drained away, leaving something cold and calculating beneath. You're making a mistake, she said, and the fragility was gone from her voice entirely. You think she's innocent? She's been undermining me since I arrived, poisoning the staff against me, turning you away. I never turned anywhere, Rowan said quietly. I walked. There's a difference. Because of her, Virel pointed at Celine, hand shaking with genuine fury now. She's cold, she's manipulative, she doesn't love you, neither do you. The words landed like stones. Virel's mouth opened, closed. No response prepared for honesty that blunt. Celine felt no triumph, just exhaustion and the strange emptiness that comes after surviving something that should have destroyed you. Magistrate, she said, I request that Miss Knox be confined pending investigation into conspiracy and fraud. The evidence suggests she orchestrated this entire scheme, knowing it could result in my wrongful imprisonment. Aldrich nodded slowly. I concur. Captain Dane, please escort Miss Knox to appropriate quarters. No! Virel backed away from Dane's approaching hand. You can't do this. I'm the victim here. I'm the one who was hurt. By your own hand, apparently, Aldrich said. We'll determine the full truth through proper inquiry. Until then, you'll remain available for questioning. Virel looked at Rowan, desperation raw on her face. Tell them I wouldn't... Rowan said nothing, just looked at her like he was seeing someone completely different from who he'd thought he knew. That silence broke something in Virel. She screamed, wordless, furious, and lunged not at Celine but at Rowan, hands curved like claws. Dane caught her mid-flight, strong arms restraining her as she thrashed and cursed. The pretty mask shattered completely, showing nothing but rage underneath. You're all fools, she shrieked. I deserved that title. I earned it. You think she's better? She's nothing. Just a merchant's daughter playing duchess. Remove her, Aldrich ordered. Dane half-carried Virel from the hall, her voice echoing off marble and ancient portraits. The obscenities would have impressed soldiers. Silence settled, awkward and vast. Celine stood at the top of the stairs, servants clustered below, her husband in the middle looking lost. Your Grace, Aldrich said to Celine, voice gentle, you're free to move about the estate as you choose. My apologies for the premature judgment. Thank you, Magistrate. He departed, leaving Celine and Rowan in the space between them that had grown too wide to cross. I should have believed you, Rowan said finally. Yes, you should have. I thought... He stopped. I don't know what I thought. that you'd finally shown cracks, that the cold control had broken, that underneath the competence was the same jealousy any woman would feel. I'm not any woman. I thought you knew that. I thought I did too. He looked at her fully, really looked. What happens now? Celine descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached him, she stopped just out of reach. Now? She let the word hang. Now you deal with the consequences of trusting someone's tears over someone's truth. Now I decide whether this marriage has any foundation left standing, and now I stop being the duchess who makes things easy for you. She walked past him toward the main hall exit. Behind her, she heard him say her name, tentative, uncertain. Celine didn't turn around. She'd survived. She'd won. But winning and healing weren't the same thing. The portrait gallery felt longer than Celine remembered. Faces of dead blackthorns watching from their frames like judges who'd already rendered their verdict. She kept walking, spine straight, refusing to let the tremor in her hands show. Behind her, Rowan's footsteps didn't follow. Good. She had nothing left to say to him that wouldn't draw blood. Thea intercepted her at the west corridor, still wearing last night's gown, hair escaping its pins. I heard shouting, Thea said breathlessly. Please tell me you didn't actually jump down those stairs to prove a point. I demonstrated physics. There's a difference. Is there? Because the rumors flying through the servants' quarters suggest you staged a full theatrical production complete with handwriting analysis and a screaming mistress being dragged away by guards. That's approximately accurate. Thea grabbed Celine's shoulders, searched her face. Are you all right? The question cracked something. Celine felt her composure slip, just for a moment, exhaustion and fear and fury flooding through the gap before she sealed it again. No, she admitted, but I'm free. That's enough for now. Free to do what? Rowan's already... I don't want to hear his name. Celine pulled away gently but firmly. I need air, space, anything that isn't this house. She made it to the gardens before the shaking started properly. Found a stone bench hidden behind overgrown rose bushes and sat before her legs could give out. Her hands wouldn't steady. Her breath came short and sharp. Not fear. Aftermath. The body finally processing what the mind had pushed through. She'd been hours away from arrest, from disgrace, from whatever legal nightmare Varel's fabrication would have created. The magistrate might have believed her eventually, might have, but the scandal alone would have destroyed her. Duchess accused of attempted murder. The tabloids would have feasted for months, and Rowan had been ready to let it happen. Had chosen Varel's tears over 6 years of partnership. That was the cut that went deepest. Not the mistress, not even the accusation. The casual dismissal, the willingness to believe the worst without question. Celine pressed her palms against her eyes, breathing through the urge to scream or cry or break something expensive. A throat cleared nearby. Celine looked up to find Mara standing at a respectful distance, holding a tea service that looked absurdly civilized given the circumstances. Thought you might need this, Mara said. And maybe company that doesn't expect you to perform composure. Celine almost laughed. Is my composure slipping? You're sitting in the bushes having what looks like a quiet crisis. I'd say slipping is generous. Fair assessment. Celine accepted the teacup, grateful for something to do with her hands. Thank you. For everything. The distraction, the passage, the testimony. You don't have to thank people for telling the truth. In my experience, yes, you do. Truth is expensive when power disagrees with it. Mara settled onto the bench without asking permission. Staff's placing bets on what happens next. Thomas thinks you'll leave. Cook thinks you'll burn the place down. I personally wagered you'd do something unexpected and terrifying. What qualifies as unexpected and terrifying? Not sure yet. That's what makes it a good bet. They sat in silence, drinking tea while birds worked through morning songs overhead. The normalcy of it felt bizarre. Hours ago, Celine had been locked in a room facing ruin. Now she was having tea in the garden with a servant who'd committed minor arson on her behalf. Miss Knox is being held in the North Tower, Mara said eventually. The old storage rooms. Captain Dane posted his most loyal guards, the ones who wouldn't be charmed by a pretty face and a sob story. And Rowan? Locked himself in his study, hasn't come out, refused breakfast, lunch, and 3 different council members who showed up wanting to know if the rumors were true. Celine sipped her tea. What rumors? That his wife nearly murdered his mistress. That his mistress framed his wife. That the whole thing's a mess and the Blackthorn reputation is taking damage. Mara's mouth quirked. Nobility loves a scandal almost as much as they hate being associated with one. Several families have already sent notes canceling upcoming engagements. The social exile would be swift. Celine knew how it worked. Proximity to controversy was contagious. Better to cut ties than risk contamination. The Merchant Council sent a representative, Mara continued. Older gentleman, well-dressed. He asked to speak with you specifically. About what? Wouldn't say. Just left his card and said he'd return tomorrow. Mara pulled a cream-colored card from her apron. Alderman Pierce. The name mean anything? It did. Pierce was old money that had successfully pivoted to new industry. Shipping, railways, manufacturing. He'd been at the banquet, but Celine hadn't spoken to him directly. He's important, Celine said. Connected. The kind of person who doesn't make social calls without strategic reason. So it's political. Everything's political. Celine tucked the card into her pocket. Did the magistrate finish his inquiry? Still questioning staff, being thorough. But the general consensus is that Miss Knox orchestrated the whole thing. Her room's been searched. They found a small blade hidden in her vanity. Fresh blood on it. Medical examiner confirmed it matches her injuries. Evidence. Undeniable and physical. Celine felt no satisfaction, just grim acknowledgement that some structures held when tested. What happens to her? Mara asked quietly. Legally, fraud, conspiracy, false accusation, could be prison time if the magistrate pursues it fully. Socially? Celine shrugged. She's finished. No family will receive her. No man will marry her. She'll be notorious for all the wrong reasons. You sound almost sorry for her. I'm not. But I understand desperation that makes you do terrible things. My father fought his way out of poverty by any means necessary. The difference is, he didn't destroy innocent people in the process. Mara stood collecting the tea things. You should rest. Properly, in your own rooms. The nightmare's over. But it wasn't. Celine could feel the next crisis building like pressure before a storm. Varel was contained, but the damage was done. The whispers, the questions, the fractures in her marriage, those didn't disappear with evidence. Mara, Celine said before the young woman could leave, you took a significant risk helping me. If you need a reference, a position elsewhere. I'm staying, Mara interrupted. This is my house too, and I think things are about to get interesting. After Mara left, Celine returned to her own chambers for the first time in 2 days. Someone had cleaned, fresh linens, open windows, the stale air of confinement replaced with late afternoon breeze. Her evening gowns hung in the wardrobe, jewelry laid out on the dressing table, books stacked by her reading chair. Everything exactly as she'd left it. As if the world hadn't nearly ended. Celine changed into simpler clothing, practical wool dress, comfortable boots. She wasn't done fighting. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the underlying rot remained. This house, this marriage, this life, all of it built on foundations she'd thought were stable but turned out to be sand. She needed to decide what to salvage and what to burn. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Not Mara this time. Captain Dane. Your Grace, forgive the intrusion. The magistrate requests your presence in the drawing room. He's prepared to deliver his preliminary findings. Is the Duke there? Yes, and several witnesses from the night in question. Formal proceedings, then. Celine followed Dane through corridors that felt different now, less like home, more like territory she'd have to reclaim or abandon. The drawing room held a dozen people. Rowan stood near the fireplace looking haggard, circles under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as poorly as Celine. Magistrate Aldrich occupied the center position, papers spread before him. Thomas, Thea, and several other banquet guests clustered near the windows. Everyone turned when Celine entered. The weight of their attention felt physical. Duchess Blackthorn, Aldrich said formally. Thank you for joining us. I've completed my initial investigation and wanted to present findings before filing official reports. Of course. Celine took a chair, aware of how carefully she was being watched, looking for cracks, for weakness, for anything that confirmed whichever narrative each observer preferred. Aldrich cleared his throat. After examining physical evidence, witness testimony, and written documentation, I've concluded that the incident of 2 nights ago was a deliberate fabrication by Miss Verel Knox. The accusations against Duchess Blackthorne are without merit and will be formally dismissed. Relief should have flooded through her. Instead, Celine felt only cold satisfaction that physics and evidence had won over performance and tears. Miss Knox will face charges of conspiracy, fraud, and filing false accusations, Aldrich continued. Given the severity and premeditation involved, I'm recommending a prison sentence of no less than 3 years. 3 years? Lord Ashford blustered from his corner. Seems harsh for a woman scorned. A woman scorned attempted to destroy an innocent person's life through calculated deception. Aldrich cut him off. The harshness is proportional to the crime. What about the Duke? Lady Pemberton asked, voice sharp with curiosity barely disguised as concern. Surely there's culpability in bringing such a person into his household, into his bed. The room went silent. Rowan's face darkened, but he said nothing. The Duke is not on trial here, Aldrich said carefully. Though his judgment may be questioned, he committed no legal offense. Just moral ones, Thea muttered, loud enough to carry. Rowan's eyes snapped to her, then to Celine. She kept her expression neutral, giving him nothing. The Duchess's reputation will be formally cleared through public statement, Aldrich said. I'll work with the press to ensure the truth is widely distributed. It won't undo the gossip, but it should mitigate the worst damage. Thank you, Magistrate. Celine's voice came out steady despite the riot of emotions underneath. I appreciate your thoroughness. You made my job easier by conducting your own investigation, though I should note that escaping confinement and staging dramatic reconstructions isn't standard legal procedure. I'll remember that for next time someone frames me for attempted murder. A few nervous laughs broke the tension. Aldrich smiled slightly. If there's nothing else, I'll file my reports and arrange Miss Knox's transfer to proper custody. Duke Blackthorne, you'll need to sign documentation releasing her from your household and revoking any financial support. Rowan nodded stiffly. Whatever's required. Excellent. Then we're concluded. Aldrich gathered his papers. The witnesses began filtering out, already whispering among themselves. The story would spread, revised version this time, but still scandal-flavored enough to feed the gossip mills. Thea caught Celine's arm on the way out. Come stay with me. You shouldn't be here. This is my home. Is it? Or is it just a battlefield you're too stubborn to leave? Celine pulled away gently. I'll let you know. Soon only Celine and Rowan remained. The drawing room felt cavernous, designed for gatherings but oppressive in its emptiness. He stood by the fireplace like he was trying to warm himself against cold that came from inside. We need to talk, he said finally. Do we? Celine, I know you believed I was capable of attempted murder. She said it flatly, no inflection. You had me locked up without trial, without question. You chose her word over mine without hesitation. I was wrong. Yes, you were, and sorry doesn't fix that. He turned to face her fully. Then what does? Tell me how to fix this. I don't know if you can. Celine moved to the window, putting physical distance between them. We had an arrangement. Not love, but respect. Partnership. I thought that meant something. Turns out it meant less than 8 months of silk and tears. She was convincing. So was I. 6 years of competence, of managing this estate, of standing beside you through every political nightmare. That should have earned me the benefit of doubt. Instead, you gave it to someone you barely knew. Because she made me feel... Rowan stopped. What? Desired? Important? Less like you'd signed a contract and more like you'd found connection? Celine's laugh came out bitter. I'm not angry you took a mistress, Rowan. I'm angry you let her destroy me, and you helped. The words landed hard. She watched them hit, watched him flinch. I don't know how to come back from this, he admitted. Neither do I. The silence stretched. Outside, afternoon was sliding toward evening, light going golden and melancholy. What do you want? Rowan asked quietly. Divorce? Separation? Name your terms. Celine considered. What did she want? Freedom felt too simple. Revenge too exhausting. Justice was already being served. Verel would pay for her crimes. I want autonomy, she said finally. Real authority over the estate's internal management. Not just ceremonial duties. I want control of the household accounts, the staff decisions, the daily operations. I want my role to mean something beyond wearing the right dress to dinners. You're asking to run the estate. I'm asking for what I've been doing anyway, just without having to defer to you for every decision. You handle external politics. I handle internal structure. Clean division of power. Rowan's jaw worked. That's not how marriages work, how ducal households operate. Celine turned from the window to face him. Our marriage stopped being traditional the moment you moved your mistress into the East Wing. We're already rewriting rules. This just makes it official. He stared at her, calculation moving behind his eyes. And if I refuse? Then I leave. Take my father's fortune with me. File for legal separation on grounds of abandonment and false accusation. The scandal will make Varel's frame job look like a garden party misunderstanding. You'd destroy both our reputations. I'd survive. I always do. Can you say the same? It was a bluff, partially. Divorce would damage them both. But Celine had learned something in the past 48 hours. Sometimes the willingness to burn everything down was the only leverage that mattered. Rowan exhaled slowly. You've changed. I stopped pretending powerlessness was virtue. If that's change, I'll take it. A knock interrupted. Captain Dane entered without waiting, face grim. Apologies, Your Grace. Your Grace. He nodded to both of them. We have a situation. Miss Knox has escaped custody. Celine's blood went cold. How? Unknown. The guards were found unconscious in the North Tower. No visible injuries, just unconscious. When they woke, she was gone. Windows too high to climb. Door was still locked from outside. It's like she vanished. Search the grounds, Rowan ordered. Every building, every room. Already underway, but there's more. Dane's expression darkened. One of the guards who was stationed there, Marcus, young fellow, been with us 6 months. He's also missing, and his family just contacted us. Said he never existed. What do you mean, never existed? The references he provided when hired, forged. The family he claimed, fictional. His entire background was fabricated. We've had an infiltrator on staff for half a year and never noticed. Celine's mind raced. Varel had help. This was bigger than one woman's ambition. Looks that way. We're checking all recent hires, anyone who might have assisted. A servant burst in, face white. Your Grace, fire! The North Tower! They ran, all 3 of them, through corridors filling with smoke, servants rushing with water buckets, chaos erupting like the house itself was coming apart. The North Tower burned from the inside out, flames visible through high windows, heat distorting the air. Staff formed bucket lines, but it was already too late. The fire had too much of a head start. Everyone out, Rowan shouted. Let it burn. Just get people clear. Celine stood watching the tower collapse in on itself, flames consuming stone and timber with equal appetite. Varel's escape, the fake guard, the fire, none of it was coincidence. This was planned, she said. All of it. The frame job was just one move in a larger game. What game? Rowan demanded. I don't know yet, but Varel wasn't working alone, and whoever's backing her just burned their evidence and sent a message. Thea appeared at Celine's side, soot-streaked and breathing hard. The servants' quarters near the tower. We need to evacuate. Already done, Dane reported. Everyone's accounted for except... His face changed. Except Mara. Has anyone seen Mara? Celine's chest tightened. She was with me this afternoon. She said she was going to... I assigned her to inventory the North Tower storage, Dane said. Routine work. She should have been there when... No. Celine started toward the burning building before anyone could stop her. Rowan grabbed her arm. You can't! Let go! Celine, it's suicide. She yanked free, but Dane blocked her path. Your Grace, the structure's already failing. If she's inside, she's... A window shattered on the second floor. Through the smoke, a figure appeared, Mara, coughing, desperate, trapped. Help! Her voice barely carried over the fire's roar. Please, I can't... The floor beneath her buckled. She grabbed the window frame, legs dangling over nothing. Celine's engineering brain kicked in, calculating load stress, burn patterns, collapse timing. Minutes, maybe less. Rope, she shouted. Get rope and... No time, someone said. The servant stood frozen, helpless. Mara's grip was failing. Celine could see it in the way her fingers slipped, the terror in her face. This girl who'd risked everything to help her. Who'd believed in truth when it was dangerous. Who'd stayed because she thought things would get interesting. Celine started forward again. This time multiple hands grabbed her. Rowan, Dane, Thomas. "You can't save her," Rowan said, and the hopelessness in his voice was what broke Celine. Mara fell. Not down, sideways, pulled by hands that shouldn't exist, back through the window into smoke and flames. "Did you see?" Thea started. The tower groaned. The entire structure shifted, stones grinding against each other. Then it came down, not collapsed, imploded, like something had pulled it inward, folding it into itself with impossible precision. When the dust cleared, where the North Tower had stood was nothing but rubble arranged in a perfect circle, and standing in the center, untouched by fire or stone, was Betrayal Knox. Except it wasn't. Not really. The body was Betrayal's, but the way it moved, predatory, controlled, utterly wrong, belonged to something else. "Hello, Duchess," Betrayal's mouth said in a voice that layered multiple tones over each other. "Did you really think this was about a title?" Behind her, rising from the rubble, was Mara, unconscious but breathing, deposited gently on the ground like a gift, or a taunt. "What are you?" Celine heard herself ask. Betrayal, not Betrayal, smiled. "The question isn't what, it's why." And the answer, the thing wearing Betrayal's face tilted its head at an angle no human neck should bend, is standing right next to you. Everyone turned to look where she indicated, at Rowan. His face had gone completely blank, not shocked, not confused, empty. "Rowan?" Celine said. He blinked. When his eyes opened, they weren't gray anymore. They were black, completely black. No iris, no white, just endless dark. "I'm sorry," he said in his own voice, strained and desperate. "I'm so sorry, Celine. I tried to fight it, but—" His body convulsed. When it straightened, the desperation was gone. Only cold intelligence remained. "Hello, wife," Rowan said in that same layered voice. "Shall we discuss the real terms of our arrangement?" Celine understood three things simultaneously. First, that Betrayal had never been the real threat. Second, that whatever had her husband wasn't human and never had been. Third, that she was standing in a circle of witnesses with nowhere to run and no idea what she was actually fighting. The thing in Rowan's body smiled with his mouth. "Your move, Duchess." Celine's mind went into the same cold, analytical mode that had saved her on the staircase. Terror wanted to flood in. Her husband's eyes gone black, something else wearing his skin, but terror was useless. Data mattered. Patterns mattered. "How long?" she asked, voice steady despite her heart trying to break through her ribs. The thing in Rowan's body tilted its head, studying her with interest that felt clinical. "How long have I been here? Since before you married him. Since before he even knew your name." 6 years. Their entire marriage. Every conversation, every negotiation, every moment she'd thought she was building partnership with a man. She'd been dealing with something else entirely. "That's not possible," Thea whispered. She'd gone pale, backing away slowly. "People don't just get possessed. That's fairy tales." "Is it?" Not Rowan gestured at the collapsed tower, the perfect circle of rubble. "You're standing in evidence that disagrees with your worldview. Adapt or break. Your choice." Captain Dane had his hand on his sword but looked lost, training inadequate for whatever this was. The servants clustered together, some praying, others just frozen. Lord Ashford had fainted outright. "What do you want?" Celine kept her attention on Rowan, on the thing using him. "You've been here 6 years. You orchestrated my marriage, Betrayal's frame job. All of it. For what purpose? You're asking the wrong questions." Not Rowan moved closer. Rowan's familiar gait twisted into something predatory. "You should be asking what you are, Duchess. Why someone like me would spend 6 years positioning you exactly where you needed to be." "I'm nobody. Merchant's daughter playing nobility. Is that what you think?" The layered voice carried something like amusement. "Your father was no merchant. He was a finder, a seeker. He dug mines not for gold, but for what gold hid. And he found something he wasn't supposed to find." Celine's father, dead 3 years now. Heart failure, the physicians had said. Sudden, but natural. "You killed him." "No, He killed himself. Drank poison the moment he realized what he'd unearthed. Smart man. Knew that some doors once opened can't be closed. Not Rowan smiled with Rowan's mouth. But before he died, he hid it, and he left clues. Clues only someone with his particular way of thinking could follow. His engineering notes, Celine said slowly. The maps, the calculations I inherited, are a treasure map to something that would shatter your precious order. And you, dear wife, are the only person alive who can read them. Understanding clicked into place with horrible clarity. You married me to Rowan to control me, to have access, to motivate you. Comfortable people don't search for answers. Desperate people do. So I made you comfortable. 6 years of tepid partnership. Just enough dissatisfaction to make you restless, but not enough to make you leave. Then Varel, beautiful, cruel Varel, created the crisis that would push you into action. Celine's yates clenched. You orchestrated my near destruction to make me, what, solve your puzzle? To make you choose. Comfort or truth, safety or discovery. The woman who stayed locked in her room would have been useless. But the woman who escaped? Who reconstructed crime scenes and forced magistrates to see evidence? That woman can find what I need. And if I refuse? Not Rowan's black eyes glittered. Then everyone here dies, slowly. Starting with the servants you risked everything to protect. Then your friend. Then I'll wear your husband's corpse for another 6 years and find someone else to solve my problem. There are other descendants, other bloodlines. You're just the most convenient. The casual cruelty of it, the calculation, reminded Celine viscerally that she wasn't negotiating with a person. This was something that measured lives in utility. You can't kill everyone, Dane said, sword finally drawn. Whatever you are, you're still in a human body, mortal, vulnerable. Am I? Not Rowan raised one hand. The sword in Dane's grip went white-hot. The captain dropped it with a yell, cradling burned fingers. I'm wearing mortality like you'd wear a coat. Convenient, limiting, but ultimately disposable. Varel, not Varel, laughed from her circle of rubble. They still don't understand. Poor things. So convinced their little rules matter. 2 of them. At least 2 of these things, working in tandem. Celine's mind raced through options, calculating vectors of escape, possible leverage, coming up empty. Then Mara groaned. The sound was soft, barely audible, but it cut through the supernatural tension like a knife. The young woman stirred in the rubble where not Varel had deposited her, consciousness returning. Not Rowan's attention snapped to her. Ah, the helpful servant, the one who committed arson for her duchess. How touching. Leave her alone, Celine said. Why would I? She's leverage, insurance. You'll cooperate because if you don't, I'll make her scream in ways that redefine the concept. Mara's eyes opened, confused, terrified, focusing on the scene with visible effort to understand. Celine made a decision. Not calculated, not engineered, instinctive. My father's notes are encrypted, she said, coded in a system only he and I understood. You can threaten everyone here, kill them all, and you still won't be able to read them without me. So here's my counteroffer. I'll find whatever you're looking for. I'll decrypt the maps, follow the trail, hand over this thing you want. But everyone here walks away unharmed. And when it's done, you leave. Rowan, Varel, everyone you've infected, you let them go. Not Rowan studied her. You're bargaining with nothing. I could torture the code out of you. Could you? My father died rather than talk. Genetic stubbornness, apparently. You could break my body. I'm sure you're creative with pain, but trauma tends to damage memory. Could you risk me forgetting crucial details because you pushed too hard? The silence stretched. Celine felt the weight of calculation behind those black eyes, entity intelligence parsing probabilities. You're more interesting than I expected, Not Rowan said finally. Most people in your position beg or bargain with emotion. You negotiate like you're discussing contract terms. I am. Terms, I find what you want. You release everyone, including my husband. And if what I want requires your husband specifically, if Rowan Blackthorn's bloodline, his position, his connections are part of the equation, Celine's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. Then we renegotiate at that point. First, you tell me what I'm actually looking for. Not Rowan smiled. The underpinning. The structure beneath your structures. The truth your civilization built itself on top of while pretending it didn't exist. Your father found the entrance, sealed it before we could reach it. You're going to unseal it. And then what? You get to unmake reality? Break the world? Break it? No, just remind it who actually owns the foundation. Not Rowan moved closer. Rowan's face inches from hers. Your precious order, nobility, laws, hierarchies. It's all performance, decoration. Underneath is something older, something that was never meant to sleep this long. Celine held her ground despite every instinct screaming to run. I'll need supplies. My father's papers, surveying equipment, time to work. You'll have 3 days. After that, I start collecting fingers. Not Rowan stepped back and something shifted. For just a moment, Rowan's gray eyes flickered back into existence, desperate and pleading. Celine, don't. Whatever it wants. Then the black swallowed his eyes again, and he stumbled, catching himself. When he straightened, the thing was back in control. 3 days, it repeated. Starting now. Not Betrayal laughed again, the sound scraping across Celine's nerves. This will be entertaining, watching you scramble, watching you fail. Quiet, Not Rowan said, and Varel's body went rigid. You've played your part. Now watch and wait. The two entities locked eyes across the courtyard, something passing between them that Celine couldn't interpret. A hierarchy, maybe. Or a disagreement. Cracks in their unity? Captain Dane, Celine said, not taking her eyes off the entities. Get Mara to the physician. Everyone else, inside now. We're done here. You don't give orders anymore, Not Rowan said mildly. Don't I? You need me functional, which means I need my people functional. Or would you prefer I work while everyone around me bleeds out from supernatural terror? Difficult to concentrate that way. A pause. Then Not Rowan waved one hand dismissively. Fine. Tend to your humans, but you... His attention fixed on Celine like a physical weight. You start immediately. Workspace in the library. I'll be watching. Always. He turned and walked toward the manor, Rowan's body moving with wrong precision. Servants scattered from his path. Not Virella hesitated, something flickering across her stolen face. Then she followed, leaving the rubble circle empty. Celine's legs almost gave out. Thea caught her elbow, gripped tight enough to bruise. What in every hell was that? Thea demanded. Exactly what it looked like. Something wearing people, controlling them. For 6 years? Your entire marriage was a lie. Yes. Celine pulled away gently, steadying herself. Help me get everyone inside. Then we need to talk, privately. The next hour was organized chaos. Mara to the physician, bruised, smoke-damaged lungs, but alive. Servants corralled into the main hall, given brandy and explanations that satisfied nothing but kept panic from becoming riot. Lord Ashford revived and immediately demanded his carriage. Thea sent him packing with threats disguised as courtesies. Captain Dane found Celine in the library, where she'd spread her father's papers across 3 tables. Maps, calculations, survey notes from mines across the kingdom. A lifetime of work that she'd thought was about wealth extraction. Now she was seeing it differently. Pattern recognition, systematic exploration, searching. Your Grace, Dane said quietly, the staff is asking if they should flee, if it's safe to stay. It's not safe anywhere if those things decide to act. Here, at least, we're together. Celine didn't look up from a map of the Northern Territories. But I won't hold anyone against their will. Whoever wants to leave, pay them severance, provide transport, make sure they're safe. Most want to stay, the ones who've served longest anyway. They say, he hesitated, they say you're the only one who's ever fought for them. They'd like to return the favor. Something cracked in Celine's chest. Loyalty she'd never asked for, never expected, showing up when everything else had fallen apart. Thank you, Captain. I have a question, if I may. Go ahead. Do you actually know what you're looking for, or are you buying time? Celine finally looked up. Dane's weathered face showed exhaustion and determination in equal measure. A soldier who'd faced battlefields but never supernatural possession, adapting because the alternative was collapse. Both, she admitted. My father's notes are coded, but I understand his system. There's something here, some pattern I'm supposed to recognize. But what the entities want, this underpinning, I have no idea what that actually is. Could you refuse?
Give them nothing?
And watch them kill everyone I've ever cared about? No. She turned back to the maps. But I can work slowly, make them think it's harder than it is, buy time to figure out what they're actually after, and whether there's a way to stop them. How do you stop something that can collapse towers with a gesture? I don't know yet, but everything has structural weaknesses, even gods. Are they gods? I hope not. Gods tend to be inconveniently immortal. Thea arrived with coffee and Lord Ashford's abandoned coat. He fled so fast he forgot to dress properly. Shall I have it burned or returned? Returned. We'll need allies eventually. Burning their belongings seems counterproductive. Allies who fainted at the first sign of trouble? Thea set down the coffee. Celine, what's the actual plan here? Because buy time while possessed entities watch you work seems thin.
It is thin, but it's what I have. Celine spread another map, this one showing underground water tables and geological strata. My father was obsessed with depth, not just mining ore, but understanding what lay beneath bedrock. He'd survey sites, take measurements, then abandon them without explanation. I always assumed he was being thorough. Now I think he was mapping something else. The underpinning. Maybe. Look at these sites. Celine traced a line connecting 6 abandoned mines. They form a perfect arc, mathematically perfect, accounting for terrain variation. My father didn't just stumble onto something, he was systematically searching. Thea studied the maps. That arc curves toward the capital. Toward this estate, actually. Celine's finger stopped mid-trace. Thea was right. The geometric center of the arc, if extended, landed almost exactly on Blackthorn Manor. It's here, Celine breathed. Whatever he found, whatever he sealed, it's under this house. That seems unnecessarily convenient for the entities currently occupying your household. Unless that's why they chose this house specifically. Not for Rowan's title, for location. Footsteps echoed outside the library. Both women tensed, but it was just Mara, bandaged and moving gingerly. You should be resting, Celine said. Should be. Not going to. Mara limped to the table. I heard what that thing said. About 3 days? About fingers? I'm not sitting in bed while people lose body parts. You nearly died in that fire. Nearly doesn't count. I'm here, I'm functional, and I know this house better than anyone. Where are we starting? Celine looked at the young woman, soot-stained, determined, refusing to break when the world turned nightmare, and felt something shift. She'd spent 6 years being the duchess who handled everything alone. Maybe that was the wrong structure. We're starting in the cellars, Celine decided. If there's an entrance to something beneath the estate, it'll be in the oldest foundations. Mara, you know the layout better than anyone. Show me the parts that don't make architectural sense. Most of it doesn't make sense. Old Duke Blackthorn added rooms on whims, closed off sections when he got bored, walled up entire wings because he didn't like the view. Perfect. Chaos creates hiding places. Thea, I need you to research the estate's history. Original construction, renovations, anything unusual. Captain Dane,
already ahead of you, I'm posting guards who've been here longest, the ones least likely to be infiltrated like Marcus was. We'll establish rotating watches, no one alone, everyone accounted for. Organization clicked into place. They worked through the night, Celine decoding her father's notation, Mara drawing cellar maps from memory, Thea digging through dusty archives for construction records. Captain Dane coordinated security, turning the manor into a fortress from the inside. Not Rowan appeared once, midnight, watching Celine work with those terrible black eyes. He said nothing, just stood in the doorway for 10 minutes, presence like cold water down her spine, then left. Near dawn, Celine found it. A notation in her father's handwriting, dated 7 years ago. Blackthorn Foundation, West Cellar, 3rd pillar from north wall. Load-bearing structure inconsistent with architectural need. Hollow? Investigate further.
He was here, Celine said. My father surveyed this estate before I ever married Rowan. He found the entrance then. So the entities knew, Thea said. They chose Rowan specifically because your father had already marked this location, married you to him to get you here, and then waited 6 years for the right crisis to motivate me. Celine's hands shook with exhaustion and fury. They've been hurting me like livestock. But you know now, that's different. Was it? Celine wasn't sure. Knowing you were being manipulated didn't automatically grant freedom from manipulation. We go to the cellar at first light, she decided. Find this pillar, see what's actually there. And if we find the entrance, do we open it? I don't know yet, but at least we'll understand what we're dealing with. They slept in shifts, 2 hours each, nobody alone. Celine dreamed of her father, his weathered hands showing her how to read survey maps, his patient voice explaining that good engineering meant understanding what held things up and what would make them fall. Every structure has a weakness, Celine, Dream Father said. Even the ones that look eternal. Find the stress point, apply the right pressure. Everything breaks eventually. She woke to gray dawn and the weight of too little sleep. The others were already moving, Thea organizing breakfast, Mara testing her mobility, Captain Dane briefing guards on cellar access routes. Ready? Dane asked. Celine wasn't, but ready had stopped mattering somewhere around the time her husband's eyes turned black. Let's go. The cellars of Blackthorn Manor descended in layers, wine storage giving way to food preservation, then older sections used for archives, then deeper still to foundations that predated the current structure. The air got colder, damper. Stone changed from cut blocks to cruder masonry. Mara led them through the maze with confidence born from childhood exploration. My mother used to send me down here for specific vintages. I'd pretend I was spelunking, found all sorts of weird passages, dead ends, rooms that went nowhere. Show me the weirdest one. They descended a narrow staircase, walls pressing close. At the bottom, a chamber opened up, low-ceilinged, supported by stone pillars. Celine counted. Third from the north wall. It looked normal, ancient stone, no different from its neighbors. But when Celine pressed her palm against it, the temperature differential was obvious. The other pillars radiated the cellar's damp chill. This one felt warm. There's heat source below, she said. Natural or unnatural, something's generating warmth. Dane tapped the pillar with his sword hilt. The sound echoed hollow. It's not load-bearing, Celine realized. It's decorative, a plug disguised as structure. How do we open it? Celine examined the base, running her fingers along the mortar. Found irregularities, not age damage, but deliberate imperfections. Patterns. Her father's encoding system. She pressed specific stones in sequence. Nothing happened. Tried again, different combination, still nothing. Maybe it's mechanical, Thea suggested. Pressure-based? Or maybe you need this. Biecheb. They spun. Not Rowan stood at the chamber entrance holding something small and metallic. A key, ornate and old. Your father took it when he sealed the entrance, Not Rowan said, conversationally. Took us 3 years to track down where he'd hidden it. Another 2 to retrieve it. We could have opened this ourselves, but... He smiled. Where's the fun in that? Give me the key, Celine said. No, I think I'll watch you beg first. I don't beg. Everyone begs eventually. Celine looked at the key, at the entity wearing her husband's face, at the pillar that blocked whatever lay beneath. Calculation after calculation ran through her mind. None of them good. What happens when I open it? She asked. You'll see. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Not Rowan tossed the key. Celine caught it reflexively. 3 days was generous. Let's make it interesting. You have until sunset today. After that, I start breaking your friend's bones. 1 per hour. See how long she stays loyal while screaming. Thea moved protectively in front of Mara. You're a monster. I'm efficient. There's a difference. Not Rowan's black eyes fixed on Celine. Open it, Duchess. Or refuse and watch everyone you care about suffer. Your move. Again. He left. Footsteps echoing up the stairs, leaving them in lamplight and impossible choices. Celine stared at the key in her palm. Heavy, inscribed with symbols she didn't recognize. Her father had hidden this, died to keep it hidden, and now she was being asked to undo his last act. Don't, Mara said quietly. Whatever's down there, don't unleash it for me. I'm not worth destroying the world. That's not your decision to make. It's not yours either. Celine looked at this young woman who'd committed arson and risked execution for someone who'd never been more than a fair employer, who'd refused to abandon the fight even when the fight turned supernatural. Everyone leaves, Celine said. Now, get out of the cellar. Go upstairs. If something happens, if this goes wrong, run. Don't look back. Celine, Thea started. That's not negotiable. Go.
They went. Reluctantly, arguing, but they went. Celine heard their footsteps fade, heard the staircase door close. Alone in the lamplight, she studied the pillar, her father's last puzzle. The key slid into a lock she hadn't seen, hidden in the stone's natural irregularities. She turned it, heard mechanisms click, grinding stone against stone. The pillar began to rotate, revealing stairs spiraling down into darkness. Heat rose from below. And something else. A sound like breathing, like something vast waking up after sleeping too long. Celine descended. The stairs went deep, deeper than should be possible given the manor's foundations. The walls changed from human-cut stone to something else. Natural rock formations that suggested she'd passed into cave systems. At the bottom, a chamber opened up. Massive, cathedral-sized, and in the center, Celine stopped breathing. It looked like machinery. Enormous gears and wheels and mechanisms carved from stone and metal, all rotating slowly. But the design was wrong. The geometry hurt to look at directly. Angles that shouldn't connect, spaces that seemed to fold through dimensions Celine didn't have words for. And threaded through it all, roots, living roots, growing through machinery, pulsing with bioluminescent light, not powering it, containing it, her father's work. He'd found this thing, and rather than destroy it, he'd sealed it, grown a living prison around whatever it was. Beautiful, isn't it? Celine spun. Not Rowan stood behind her, black eyes reflecting the bioluminescent glow. Not Varel stood beside him, both entities descending the stairs Celine had opened. "You're early," Celine said, fighting for composure. "You're predictable. We knew you'd open it alone. Couldn't risk your friends, couldn't resist the puzzle." Not Rowan moved toward the machinery. "Your father thought he could contain the underpinning, thought living growth could hold it indefinitely. But all prisons have weaknesses. All cages eventually fail." "What is it? What holds up your reality?" "The machinery of existence. Your kind built civilization on top of this, forgot it was there, pretended the foundation was solid. But it's not. It's maintained, requires tending, and we," he gestured to himself and not Varel, "are the original tenders, exiled topside when your ancestors decided they didn't need us anymore. Time to reclaim our position." "By breaking it?" "By controlling it. Whoever controls the underpinning controls everything built on top. Simple structural engineering, really. You of all people should appreciate that." Celine's mind raced. The machinery, the roots, the implications. "My father didn't just seal it," she said slowly. "He rigged it. Those roots aren't just containment, they're explosive growth. If the machinery's tampered with, they'll expand, fill the whole chamber, crush it all." "Yes," Not Rowan said, and for the first time his voice carried frustration. "Very clever, very permanent, which is why we need you. To carefully extract the control nodes without triggering the failsafe. Your father's engineering, your father's code, your father's daughter." Understanding crashed into Celine with physical force. They needed her. Not just as motivation, not just as puzzle solver. The actual work required someone who understood both systems, human engineering and whatever this was. Someone who could navigate between them. She was the only bridge, which meant she had leverage. "No," Celine said. Not Rowan's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" "I said no, I'm not extracting anything. I'm not helping you control this. My father died to keep it sealed. I'm honoring that. I'll kill everyone upstairs." "You'll try. But the moment anyone dies, I trigger the failsafe myself. Destroy this whole thing. Your underpinning, your control, all of it. Gone. You can inhabit Rowan's body for 1,000 years. Won't matter if there's nothing to control." Silence. The machinery turned, indifferent to the humans standing beneath it. Not Varel laughed, the sound scraping and wrong. "She's bluffing. Humans don't sacrifice themselves, they break." "Maybe," Celine said. "Want to test that theory? Because I've had a really terrible week. My marriage is possessed. I was nearly executed for a crime I didn't commit, and I just opened a hole to something that shouldn't exist. My capacity for self-preservation is pretty much exhausted." She moved toward the central root system, where it wrapped thickest around the machinery's heart. Put her hand on it. Felt the pulse of living growth, the tension of barely contained expansion. "Your move," she said, meeting Not Rowan's black eyes. "Back off and negotiate, or I pull this root, and we all find out what happens when reality's foundation collapses." The entity stared, calculating, parsing threat assessment. Then Not Rowan smiled. Actually smiled. "You're not what I expected," he said. 6 years watching you be dutiful and cold. Thought you'd break easy under pressure. Instead, you get more dangerous. Disappointment must be novel for you. It's refreshing, actually." He stepped back, hands raised in mockery of surrender. "Fine. Negotiation. What do you want?" "Everyone released. Rowan, Varel, any other people you've infected. You leave them, leave this place, and I'll consider helping you find another way to your control mechanism." "Consider isn't agreement. It's what I'm offering." Not Varel hissed. "You can't negotiate with humans. They lie. They break promises." "Quiet," Not Rowan said, attention fixed on Celine. "She's not lying. Look at her. She'd actually do it. Destroy everything rather than cooperate under duress." "Then kill her and find another." "There is no other. Her bloodline, her training, her specific combination of skills. It took 6 years to position this exact person in this exact place. Starting over means another generation, another lifetime. I'm not patient enough for that." The admission was a crack in the facade. They needed her more than she'd realized. Needed her alive, cooperative, functional. Leverage. "Release my husband," Celine said. "Right now. Show me you can. Then we'll discuss terms." Not Rowan's black eyes studied her for a long moment. Then he closed them. When Rowan opened his eyes again, they were gray, human. He gasped, stumbled, caught himself on the chamber wall. "Celine?" His voice, his actual voice, stripped of layered tones. "What? Where are we? What happened?" "It's complicated." "Are you hurt?" I can't remember. There are gaps, huge gaps in my memory." He looked around wildly, saw the machinery, the roots, Not Varela standing like a corpse puppet. "What is that? What's happening?" "Something your body was hosting. It let you go, for now." Rowan's face crumbled. "I felt it. Inside me. Controlling me. I tried to fight, but it was like being buried alive in my own skin." Celine felt unexpected sympathy. Whatever Rowan had done, whatever mistakes he'd made, possession wasn't a punishment anyone deserved. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Then go upstairs, find Captain Dane, tell him the Duchess is negotiating, and to stand ready." "Celine, I can't leave you." "Yes, you can. Go." He went stumbling up the stairs, free but traumatized. Celine turned back to the entity. "There," she said. "Good faith. Now release Varel and we'll talk." Not Varel's body convulsed. When the entity left, Varel collapsed like puppet with cut strings. She lay there breathing shallowly, alive but unconscious. Happy? Not Rowan, just not something now, standing in empty space, form rippling like heat distortion. It had a shape without Rowan's body. Vaguely humanoid but wrong in proportions. Like someone had drawn a person from description but never seen one. Translucent, shifting, barely visible in the bioluminescent glow. "Getting there," Celine said. "Now explain exactly what you need from the underpinning. Real explanation, not threats disguised as philosophy." The entity drifted closer. "Control nodes. There are 7. Currently integrated with your father's root system. They need to be carefully extracted and recalibrated. Do that, and we regain access to the machinery's primary functions." "And what are those functions?" "Everything. Weather, tectonics, the flow of time itself. Your reality runs on this machinery whether you know it or not. We maintained it for eons before your kind locked us out. Now we want back in. To do what? Reshape the world? Enslave humanity? To restore balance. Your civilization is a cancer growing without check. The machinery was meant to regulate, to maintain equilibrium. Without us, it drifts. Eventually it fails. And when it fails, everything ends. Everything ends badly. With us controlling it, the ending can at least be managed." Celine looked at the machinery, at the roots, at the impossible geometry. Her father had understood enough to know this needed to stay sealed. But had he known why? Or just feared the unknown? "I need proof," she said. "Proof that you're actually maintenance and not destruction. Proof that unsealing this helps more than it hurts." "There is no proof. Only choice. Trust or don't. Cooperate or destroy everything. Those are your options." Then I choose a third option. I study it. I understand it myself before making any decision. You've waited this long. You can wait while I work. The entity rippled with what might have been frustration. Time is not infinite, but not immediate. You said yourself you're not patient. Prove it. Let me work. Help me understand. And maybe I'll help you, but only if I'm convinced it's right. Silence stretched. The machinery turned. Somewhere above, the manor held its breath.
1 week, the entity said finally. 7 days to study, to understand, to decide. After that, I reclaim my hosts, and we return to the simple solution of threats and suffering. Deal. The entity faded, dissipating into the chamber's strange light. Celine stood alone with unconscious Varela and machinery that held up reality. Her hand was still on the root system. One pull, and it all ended. She'd meant it as a bluff, but standing here now, feeling the power of that potential destruction, it was almost tempting. Instead, she helped Varel to her feet. The woman stirred, groaning. What? Varel's eyes opened, human and confused. Duchess? Where? Long story. Can you climb stairs? I think, what happened? The last thing I remember is meeting Rowan at a winter ball. He was so charming, so... 8 months ago? No, that was last week. I'm certain 8 months of missing memory. The entity had been wearing Virel even longer than it admitted.
Come on, Celine said. Let's get you upstairs. You've got a lot to catch up on. They climbed together, Duchess and the woman who'd tried to destroy her, both victims of something neither had understood. At the top, guards waited with drawn weapons. Rowan stood supported by Captain Dane, face still shell-shocked. It's done, Celine said. For now. We have a week. Everyone who was taken has been released. And then? Thea asked. Then I decide whether to save the world or end it. Celine looked at her assembled people. Loyal servants, traumatized husband, confused former enemy. But first I need coffee, and someone needs to explain to Virel why she's missing 8 months of memory and facing 3 years in prison. Virel made a small, broken sound. Celine almost felt sorry for her. Almost. They emerged from the cellars into dawn light. The manor stood solid around them, stones and timbers and foundations. All of it resting on machinery that shouldn't exist, maintained by entities humanity had forgotten. Her father had died keeping this secret. Now Celine held it, along with the weight of deciding whether to honor his sacrifice or accept the entity's bargain. 1 week, 7 days to understand reality's foundation and choose whether to seal it forever or let ancient powers reclaim their position. Celine looked at Rowan, free now, himself again, watching her with guilt and gratitude warring on his face. We need to talk, she said. I know, but first, I need you to understand something. I'm not the woman you married. That person would have broken under this. The person standing here. She met his eyes. I'm someone new, someone you'll have to get to know again, if you want to. I do, he said quietly. I want to, if you'll let me. Celine considered the man who'd been possessed, who'd doubted her, who'd chosen wrong so many times, but also the man who'd just been released from a nightmare and was still standing, still trying. We'll see, she said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was possibility. And right now, possibility felt like victory enough. The week passed in fragments. Celine descended into the chamber daily, studying the underpinning with the methodical precision her father had taught her. She mapped the root system, documented the machinery's rotations, measured heat signatures and energy flows that had no business existing in a world governed by physics she understood. The entity kept its distance, watching but not interfering. Occasionally its form would shimmer into visibility at the chamber's edges, translucent, patient, hungry. On the third day, Celine found her father's final journal, hidden in a crevice near the 7th control node, wrapped in oilcloth that had kept it dry despite the chamber's humidity. The last entry was dated 3 days before his death. I've sealed it as best I can. The roots will hold for a generation, maybe 2. Long enough for Celine to grow into the woman who can make the choice I couldn't. The entities claim they're maintenance, and maybe they are. Maybe reality does need tending. But I've seen what they become when they have power. Arbitrary, cruel,
treating human lives like variables in an equation. I'd rather risk collapse than guarantee tyranny. Celine, if you're reading this, trust yourself. You see structures I never could. Whatever you decide, I'll have been proud of you. Celine read it 3 times, eyes burning. Her father's blessing and his burden handed down across death. That evening, she called a meeting. Everyone assembled in the great hall. Rowan, Thea, Captain Dane, Mara, Thomas, and 24 servants who'd chosen to stay despite the supernatural chaos. Even Betrayal, who'd been released from confinement once the magistrate understood she'd been possessed during her crimes. Betrayal sat in the corner, thin and hollow-eyed, mourning 8 months she couldn't remember. She'd apologized to Celine twice. Celine had accepted once. Forgiveness would take longer. "I need to show you something," Celine said. "And then I need your help making a decision that affects everyone." She led them down to the chamber. The descent took 20 minutes, the group moving slowly, exclaiming at the depth, the heat, the impossible geometry. When they reached the bottom and saw the underpinning, the silence was total. "This is what holds up our world," Celine explained. "Machinery maintained by entities we exiled. They want back in. They claim without them, it eventually fails. With them it runs forever, but under their control." "And you believe them?" Rowan asked. He'd been careful around her all week, giving space, asking permission before speaking. Like she was fragile. Or dangerous. Maybe both. "I believe the machinery is real. I believe it needs maintenance, whether they're the only ones who can provide that maintenance." Celine shrugged. "That's what I've spent a week trying to determine." She walked them through her findings. The 7 control nodes, the root containment system, the energy flows. She showed them her father's calculations, his projections for when the seal would fail without intervention. 40 years, she said, maybe 50. Then the roots die, the machinery drifts, and we face whatever failure means for reality's foundation. "So we're damned either way," Thea said. "Let the entities in now and accept tyranny, or wait 40 years and face collapse." That was the equation my father saw. It's why he chose suicide over solving it. "But you found a third option," Mara said. It wasn't a question. Celine smiled despite the gravity. "I found the possibility of one. It's not elegant. It's not certain. But it's there." She led them to the central mechanism where the 7th control node sat wrapped in the thickest root mass. "My father designed this seal to be permanent, but he was thinking in absolutes, contain forever or release completely. He didn't consider gradual integration." "Meaning what?" Rowan asked. "Meaning the entities claim they're needed for maintenance. Fine. Let them maintain, but not from inside the machinery. From outside. Supervised. Limited. We control access, they provide expertise, partnership instead of surrender or exile." Captain Dane frowned. "They'll never accept that. They want control. They want the machinery functional. Control is their preferred method, but it's not the only method." Celine pulled out modified diagrams she'd spent 3 days drafting. "I've designed a new interface, external access points that allow maintenance without requiring the entities to integrate with the control nodes. Think of it like letting them tend a garden from outside the fence instead of living in the greenhouse." "Can that work?" Thea studied the diagrams. "Mechanically, I mean? Structurally, yes. The challenge is enforcement, making sure they stay on their side of the fence." Celine looked at her assembled people. "Which is where you come in. I can build the interface, but monitoring it, enforcing the boundaries, making sure neither side cheats. That requires people. A lot of people. An organization dedicated to maintaining the balance." Understanding rippled through the group. "You want to create a new order?" Thomas said slowly. "Not nobility, not entities. Something between." "A guild," Mara added. "Like the old trade guilds, but for reality maintenance." "Exactly." Celine spread the diagrams across a clear section of machinery. "The guild of the underpinning. Humans trained in the machinery's operation, working alongside entities who provide knowledge we lack. Shared responsibility, shared risk, nobody with absolute control." "The entities will hate it," Betrayal said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since entering the chamber. "They've waited generations to reclaim their power. You're offering them half measures." "I'm offering them purpose without tyranny. They can refuse. But if they do, I activate my father's failsafe, and we all face the consequences together."
Rowan moved closer to the diagrams, studying them with the focus he usually reserved for political contracts. This would require resources, training facilities, ongoing funding, political support, which is why I need the Duke of Blackthorn's backing, the title, the connections, the legitimacy. Celine met his eyes. I'm asking you to support something that will take resources from the estate, attention from traditional duties, and probably earn us enemies among the nobility who'd prefer ignorance. You're asking me to help you build something revolutionary. I'm asking you to choose between convenient lies and uncomfortable truth. Again, hoping you make a different choice this time. The barb landed. Rowan flinched but didn't look away. I choose truth. Whatever it costs, I choose you. It wasn't enough. One declaration didn't erase 6 years of choosing wrong, but it was a start. Then we have work to do, Celine said. She called the entity. Didn't know how exactly, just focused her intention toward the shimmer at the chamber's edge and waited. It materialized slowly, form stabilizing into something more defined than before, almost human-shaped. Almost. You've made a decision, it said. Not a question. I have. I'm offering a partnership. External maintenance access supervised by a human guild trained specifically for this purpose. You get to preserve the machinery. We get to ensure you don't abuse that access. The entity rippled with what might have been amusement or anger. You're offering us servitude disguised as cooperation. I'm offering you purpose with accountability. You can accept it, or I can seal this chamber forever, and we'll all deal with the consequences in 40 years. You'd condemn your own grandchildren to face collapse? I'd leave them the choice. Same as my father left me. Better than condemning them to live under your absolute control. Silence. The machinery turned, indifferent to the negotiations happening in its shadow. There's a third entity, it said finally. The one who orchestrated Marcus, who burned the tower. It won't accept your terms. It wants total restoration of our original authority. Then you'll have to convince it, or I'll seal you all out and take my chances. You're bluffing. Am I? Celine moved to the root system, placed her hand on the central mass. I've been bluffing for a week. At some point, it stops being bluff and starts being commitment. Where do you think I am now? The entity studied her with something that might have been respect. You're more like your father than you know. He was also willing to burn the world rather than compromise his principles. The difference is, I'm not compromising, I'm negotiating. There's a distinction. Another long silence. Then the entity shifted, form rippling. I'll speak with the others. If they agree, if we all agree, what guarantees do we have that you'll honor this partnership? That humanity won't simply lock us out again once we've shared our knowledge? None. Same guarantee I have that you won't abuse the access once you have it. We're both taking risks. That's what partnership means. I could kill you now. Force your hand. You could try, but the moment I die, Captain Dane has orders to trigger the failsafe. Same if any of my people die suspiciously. We're all insurance for each other now. The entity made a sound like wind through broken architecture. Laughter, maybe. You've turned your weakness into leverage. Clever. I learned from the best. You spent 6 years teaching me how to survive being manipulated. Congratulations on creating your own opposition. We'll discuss your terms. Return here in 3 days. I'll have an answer. It faded before Celine could respond, leaving the chamber feeling suddenly empty despite the dozen humans still present. That went better than expected, Thea said. Or worse, hard to tell with entities that speak in metaphor and threat. Celine turned to face her people. If they accept, this becomes real. The guild needs to be built. We'll need to recruit, train, establish protocols, and we'll need to defend this place from anyone who thinks they can use the underpinning for their own purposes. The nobility will fight you, Rowan warned. They won't want to admit their power rests on machinery instead of birthright. Then they'll fight. I'm done caring what comfortable people think about uncomfortable truths. Over the next 3 days, Celine planned obsessively. She drafted guild charters, designed training curricula, identified potential recruits from servants who'd already proven their loyalty. Mara volunteered immediately. Thomas followed. Captain Dane took longer, career soldier struggling with concepts that didn't fit military hierarchy, but eventually agreed to head the security division. Thea committed her family's resources, the garrison fortune backing what she called the most interesting madness I've ever been adjacent to.
Virel asked to help. Celine hesitated. I lost 8 months, Virel said quietly. They were in the library late evening, going through recruitment lists. 8 months of being a puppet, of hurting people while something else wore my face. I can't undo that, can't apologize enough, but I can work towards something that makes sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. You'd be starting from scratch. No authority, no respect. People remember what you did, even if you weren't in control. I remember too. Every time I close my eyes, I remember waking up in that rubble, covered in blood I'd apparently caused myself. Not remembering is almost worse than remembering would be. Virel's hands shook. Please, let me earn back some fraction of humanity. Celine looked at this woman who'd been her enemy, her rival, her unwitting co-victim. You'll work under Mara, follow her orders without question, prove yourself over months, not days. And if you ever give me reason to doubt your commitment, you're gone. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This work is dangerous. You might die doing it. Better than dying having done nothing. On the third evening, Celine descended alone to the chamber. The entity waited, form more stable than before, and beside it, 2 others, 3 total, shimmering in the bioluminescent glow. We've reached consensus, the first entity said. We accept your terms, external access, human oversight, shared maintenance responsibility. But we have conditions. Of course you do. The guild must include entity members, not as servants, as equals. Shared knowledge requires shared authority. Celine had anticipated this. Agreed, but entity members can't outnumber humans. 50-50 split at maximum, and major decisions require majority consensus from both groups. Acceptable. Second condition, the Duke must formally cede authority over the underpinning to the guild. This can't be a Blackthorn family project. It must be independent. I'll need to discuss that with, I'm already in agreement. Celine turned. Rowan stood at the chamber entrance, silhouetted against stairway light. He descended slowly, taking in the entities, the machinery, the weight of what they were building. This is bigger than one house or one title, he said. The underpinning belongs to everyone. The guild should reflect that. He reached Celine's side, standing close but not touching. I'll draft the session documents, transfer ownership and operational authority to the guild. Blackthorn Manor can serve as headquarters, but the power stays with the organization. The entities rippled. Unexpected. Most of your kind cling to power until death. Most of my kind haven't been possessed by ancient entities and realized how little their power actually means. Rowan looked at Celine. I'm trying to be better, to choose better. This seems like a good place to start. Celine felt something shift between them. Not forgiveness, too soon for that, but recognition. He was trying, actually trying. Third condition, the entity continued. We need access to 7 individuals of our choosing, not possession, hosting. They retain full control. We simply inhabit alongside them. Symbiotic relationship allows us to maintain physical presence without dominating human consciousness. Volunteers only, Celine said immediately. No coercion, no manipulation. People who understand what they're agreeing to and consent freely. Agreed. Though finding humans willing to share their body with ancient entities may prove challenging. You'd be surprised what people will do for purpose and meaning. They negotiated details for 2 hours, access protocols, safety measures, conflict resolution procedures. Celine insisted on written contracts. The entities found this amusing but complied, dictating terms that Rowan transcribed in elegant script. Finally, as dawn approached topside, they reached the final point. The failsafe, the first entity said. Your father's root system. It must be deactivated. We can't work under permanent threat of annihilation. Celine had known this was coming. The leverage that had kept her alive, kept the entities negotiating instead of dominating. They were asking her to surrender it. No, she said. The entities stilled. We've agreed to everything. And you could still betray those agreements. The failsafe stays active, modified maybe. Longer trigger delay, harder to activate accidentally, but functional. Insurance for both sides. You get access. We get the ability to shut you down if you abuse it. That's not trust. Trust is earned. Give us a decade of good faith partnership, then we'll discuss deactivation. Until then, it's non-negotiable. The entities conferred silently, forms merging and separating in patterns Celine couldn't interpret. Finally, Acceptable, but we reserve the right to revisit this condition as the partnership develops. Fair. They sealed the agreement formally. No signatures, entities didn't have hands in the traditional sense, but a ritual Celine didn't fully understand involving her blood, Rowan's blood, and something the entities contributed that looked like liquid starlight. It mixed in a stone bowl older than the chamber, older than the manor, old enough that Celine wondered if it predated human civilization entirely. When it was done, the machinery's rotation changed. Subtle, but noticeable. Like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. It knows, the first entity said. The underpinning recognizes the new arrangement. Maintenance can begin. Not yet, Celine said. First we train the humans, build the guild properly. Rushing creates mistakes, and mistakes here cost everything. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. However long it takes to do it right. The entities rippled with impatience but agreed. They faded, leaving Celine and Rowan alone in the chamber. We actually did it, Rowan said quietly. Negotiated with ancient entities and survived. Survived so far. The hard part starts now, building something that lasts, that actually works. How do you feel? Celine considered. How did she feel? Exhausted, terrified, but also powerful, she admitted. Not like I control anything, like I finally stopped being controlled. There's a difference. I'm sorry, Rowan said, for not seeing it sooner, for not trusting you when it mattered. I know. Is there a way back from this? For us? Celine looked at him, really looked, saw the guilt, the hope, the man who'd been possessed and come out the other side damaged but trying. I don't know, she said honestly. The marriage we had before, that's gone, built on foundations that turned out to be lies. But maybe we could build something new, different, more honest. I'd like that. It won't be easy. I'm not the duchess who made things easy anymore. Good. Easy is overrated. I'd rather have real. They ascended together, climbing toward dawn. At the top, the household waited. News had spread. The entities had agreed the guild was happening, the world had quietly changed overnight, and most people would never know. Alderman Pierce was there, the merchant council representative who'd left his card a week ago. He stood with Thea, both looking pleased with themselves. Your Grace, Pierce said, bowing to Celine. I've been waiting to discuss a business proposal. The council has resources, financial, political, architectural. If this guild of yours needs backing, we'd like to negotiate terms. You don't even know what it does, Celine said. Don't I? I know your father surveyed half the kingdom looking for something beneath the surface. I know something unusual has been happening in this household. I know you've assembled loyal people and you're planning something ambitious. Pierce smiled. I'm a businessman, Your Grace. I recognize opportunity when I see it, and this, whatever this is, has the shape of something that changes everything. Celine looked at Thea, who shrugged. I may have mentioned your project to certain interested parties. You'll need funding. Why not take it from people who understand investment? You're leveraging reality's foundation like it's a railway contract. Everything's negotiable if you're brave enough. You taught me that. Over the following months, the guild took shape. Celine recruited widely, not just nobility, but engineers, scholars, servants who understood maintenance in detail, people who could see structures others missed. Mara became the head of training, designing curricula that combined engineering principles with entity-provided knowledge about the underpinning specific mechanisms. Varele worked under her without complaint, slowly earning back fragments of trust. Captain Dane established security protocols, defending the chamber from intrusion while allowing authorized access. Thomas managed logistics, supplies, schedules, the mundane necessities that kept ambitious projects functional. Rowan handled politics. He presented the guild to nobility as a research institution, to the crown as a protective measure, to the public as a historical preservation society. Nobody questioned too deeply. People rarely did when money and authority said not to. 7 volunteers stepped forward for entity hosting. Celine interviewed each one personally, making sure they understood what they were agreeing to. 2 were servants, 3 were scholars, 1 was a former soldier, and 1 was a young noble who'd always felt disconnected from her family's expectations. I want purpose, she said simply. If carrying an ancient entity gives me that, I'll do it. The hosting ritual happened in the chamber, supervised by Celine and witnessed by the full guild membership. The entities integrated carefully, keeping their promise, inhabiting alongside human consciousness rather than dominating it. When it was done, the 7 hosts stood changed. Eyes that sometimes flickered with that translucent shimmer, voices that occasionally carried harmonic overtones. But themselves, still themselves, just expanded. "It's like having a very old, very weird roommate in my head," one of the servant hosts reported. "It keeps commenting on my decisions, but it doesn't stop me from making them." Maintenance began. The entities working through their hosts showed humans how to calibrate the control nodes, how to read the machinery's rhythms, how to strengthen root containment while allowing necessary access. It was slow, careful, nothing like the dramatic takeover the entities had originally wanted, but it worked. Celine divided her time between the chamber and the surface, between entity negotiations and human administration. She redesigned the estate's authority structure, claiming formal control over internal operations, while Rowan handled external relations. Partnership, but with clear boundaries. They had dinner together twice a week. Conversations that started awkward, but gradually found rhythm. They talked about guild business mostly, but sometimes about other things. Books. Weather. The strange new reality they inhabited. One evening, 6 months into the guild's operation, Rowan asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" Celine set down her wine. "I think forgiveness is the wrong goal. What you did, believing Betrayal, ordering my arrest, that happened. It shaped me, changed me. I can't forgive it because I can't wish it away. But I can accept it, build something alongside it. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but I'm not measuring what you deserve. I'm measuring what I need, and I need a partner who's learned from his mistakes, who chooses differently when similar situations arise. Can you be that person?" "I'm trying." "Then we'll see where trying leads." A year after the initial agreement, the guild held its first formal assembly. Representatives from all branches, human and entity hosted, gathering to assess progress and plan expansion. The entities reported that the underpinning was stabilizing. Drift that had been worsening for generations was correcting. The machinery ran smoother, more efficiently. "How long until it's fully stable?" Celine asked. "At current rate of maintenance?" 5 years. 10 to be certain. But the immediate crisis is past. Your father's seal bought enough time. Your guild is providing the solution. It felt anticlimactic. No dramatic collapse averted at the last second. Just slow, careful work accumulating into success. But that was how real engineering worked. Not heroic gestures, but sustained effort. Magistrate Aldrich attended the assembly as an observer. He'd been read into the guild's true purpose, one of the few outsiders trusted with full knowledge. "Remarkable," he said, watching entity hosts and human members collaborate over maintenance schedules. "You've built something entirely new. Not quite human, not quite other, something between." "Something that works," Celine corrected. "That's the only metric that matters." After the assembly, she stood in the chamber alone. The bioluminescent roots pulsed gently. The machinery turned with its impossible geometry, and overhead, 3 stories up, behind stone and timber, the manor continued its daily rhythms. People who had no idea what held up their reality, who'd never know how close they'd come to losing it, who'd continue living, arguing, loving, dying, all of it supported by machinery maintained by a partnership between humanity and something older. Her father would have been proud, or horrified, possibly both. "Your Grace?" Mara descended the stairs carrying reports. "The northern node needs calibration. Nothing urgent, but we should schedule it for next week. Also, Betrayal passed her certification exam. She's officially a full member now." "How'd she handle it?" "Cried when we told her." "Happy crying, I think." "Hard to tell with Betrayal. She's still working through a lot." "Aren't we all?" They reviewed the reports together, discussing maintenance schedules and training rotations. Technical details that would bore most people but fascinated Celine. This was her element: systems, structures, making sure pieces fit together properly. "Can I ask you something?" Mara said after they'd finished. "Personal question." "Go ahead." "Are you happy?" Celine considered. Was she happy? Her marriage was complicated, her responsibilities enormous,
Her daily work involved negotiating with entities that could theoretically destroy reality. But I'm purposeful, she said. I know what I'm building and why it matters. I have people I trust and work that challenges me. Happy might be the wrong word. But satisfied? Yes, I'm satisfied. That's something. It's everything. Mara left to deliver the reports. Celine remained in the chamber a while longer, hand resting on the root system her father had grown to contain, something too dangerous to release but too vital to destroy. He'd been right and wrong simultaneously. Right that the entities couldn't be trusted with absolute control. Wrong that permanent sealing was the only alternative. There had been a third option: partnership, compromise, shared authority. But he'd needed to make his choice based on the knowledge he had, and she'd needed to make hers based on what she'd learned. Different generations, different solutions. That was how progress worked. Eventually she climbed to the surface. The sun was setting, painting the manor's stones gold and rose. Rowan stood in the garden, watching the light fade. He turned when he heard her approach. "How's the underpinning?" "Stable? Maintained? Exactly as it should be." "And us?" Celine moved to stand beside him, not quite touching but present. "Also stable, also maintained, also exactly as we should be, which is complicated, careful, but functional." He smiled at that. "I can work with functional." "Good, because I'm not offering anything else." They stood together watching the sunset, two people who'd survived possession, betrayal, supernatural crisis, and each other. The Duchess who'd learned to fight, and the Duke who'd learned to listen. Not perfect, not healed, but building something new from the wreckage of what they'd been. Below their feet, invisible to everyone but those who knew to look, the machinery of reality turned. Maintained by humans and entities working together, kept honest by fail-safes and mutual vulnerability, supporting a world that would never know how close it had come to collapsing. Celine had set out to prove her innocence in a crime she didn't commit. She'd ended up rewriting the fundamental relationship between humanity and the forces that shaped existence. Not bad for a merchant's daughter who'd married into nobility and learned to see through traps. The sun finished setting. Stars emerged overhead, light from distances so vast they made human concerns feel microscopic. But somewhere in that vastness, the same forces that powered stars also turned the machinery beneath Blackthorn Manor. Everything connected. Everything supported something else. Remove one piece and the whole structure shifted. Celine had learned to work with that truth instead of fighting it, to build structures that acknowledged their own fragility while standing firm anyway. "Dinner?" Rowan asked. "Dinner," Celine agreed. They walked toward the manor together, toward lamplight and warmth and the next day's challenges. Behind them, the garden settled into night. Beneath them, the underpinning continued its endless rotation. And in the space between surface and foundation, the guild kept watch. Humans and entities maintaining the machinery of existence, one careful calibration at a time. It wasn't the ending Celine had imagined when she'd stood at the top of those marble stairs, accused and cornered, but it was the ending she'd earned. Through seeing what others missed, through refusing to accept false choices, through building partnerships from the wreckage of manipulation. The Duchess, who survived by becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who understood that the real power wasn't in controlling others, it was in refusing to be controlled. That was worth everything she'd lost along the way.